Hi, everybody. We are about we are about to begin. We'll wait for a few seconds to see if anybody else shows up. We're about to begin how to live vibrantly at any age. I'm so excited because we have wonderful speakers today. We have our first speaker will be Dr. Don Forrester, who's been a longtime friend of mine, and he's amazing for what he has done and what he's doing still. Hey, there's Dr. Benny. Hi. And
Hi,
hi. So nice to see you.
nice to
Uh,
see you. Look at Don, you've got a big beard.
yeah, Don has a big beard. Um, so we're starting now, and I'm going to introduce Don first because he's an amazing guy. He's a not only a doctor, he's board certified. He's retired from family medicine after 45 years of clinical experience. He received his undergraduate degree in chemical engineering from Lehigh University and his medical degree from Georgetown University. He did his family medicine residency at UC Davis in Sacramento, where we both live. And then he worked for Permanente Medical Group in Northern California for many years. And then he would also, I can't believe all the things you've done while serving leadership roles. He is a graduate of Intermountain Healthcare Advanced Training Program. I don't know what that is exactly, but it sounds good. Fellow with the American College of Physician Executives, which I love that. So, and then he also has designed programs and patients and saw patients and programs to reverse chronic disease uh, and conditions. So, and he also worked for the International Meals for Health programs, the Sacramento Food Bank, and Progressive Baptist Church in Berkeley. He had the privilege of seeing Dr. McDougall patients. And he also works with Dr. Greger in nutritionfacts.org, served on the board of that. And he's also involved with PCRM, which I'm involved with also. PCRM stands for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, run by Dr. Neil Barnard. And what Dr. Don Forrester's been doing is working on lawsuits against the USDA and HHS because of the dietary guidelines. They are not correct. I'm so glad they're doing this. And he has a lawsuit against the state of California, also with PCRM. And he served on the True North Health Foundation board too. So with that, boy, you took the wind out of me, Don. You have so many things going on. But thank you for doing all you have done and all you are doing. When do you have time to go on vacation? Oh, we can't hear you.
Am I muted?
You were. Now you're not. Now you're good. Now you're
Okay,
good.
got it. Hi, Andy. Hi, Jim. Good seeing you again. You're looking good. So thanks, Linda, for that introduction. Amazing what you're doing with the animals and the veganism. I think I'll start with just some comments. I don't know when the panel comes up and when we get into questions and answers, but
It's the last 15 minutes after 30 minutes.
okay. So I'll just go for 30 and then or sooner, and we'll open it up for any questions people have. They can put them in the chat or they can just raise their hands and you can call on them and repeat the question. So I've been around for a while. I'm retired, but I still do presentations and I teach at Renaissance. So what I tell people is I've given up on retirement. We're the only species that retires, right? And so my first career after I decided to go through medicine, which I gratefully did, I got exposed to the Permanente Medical Group while I was a resident in family medicine and went to work for them in 1978, back in the Middle Ages. And I worked for them. For 30 years, I pushed pills and procedures. Toward the end of that, I met Neil Barnard, PCRM, and read the China study by Colin Campbell and went plant-based at age 58, 16 years ago. And of course, the conundrum that everybody needs to appreciate is nobody knows what they prevent. So I may have had a heart attack or a stroke since then. Who knows if I hadn't changed my diet? So the science around what you should be eating is fairly clear. We're laying track as we go. When I played basketball in high school, I was told not to lift weights because it made me muscle bound. And we've actually learned stuff just like the science keeps coming out. And for anybody on the call that wants to understand about the best science around nutrition, I would just follow Gregor at nutritionfacts.org. Disclaimer, I first met Michael when he was doing his presentations before he founded Nutrition Facts. And then I got to know him a little bit better at one of the McDougall Advanced Study Weekends, and I got asked to start being part of his board when he set up nutritionfacts.org, which is a nonprofit.
Don, can I interrupt you for 1 minute?
Sure. Go ahead.
When and how did you find out that the doctors were not giving people the right scientific information to be healthy? How old were you? What happened? What was the starting point?
Well, the starting point was Neil Barnard, actually. He wrote a great book for diabetes called Neil Barnard's Program for Reversing Diabetes. I started using that with patients toward the tail end of my clinical career with Permanente, and started getting people off pills and avoiding, and curing pre-diabetes. So I started giving talks with the various internal medicine areas, departments, and about my success. And it became fairly apparent to me, even before I met John McDougall, that they were talking about counting carbohydrates. They still preach that, but for some reason, but it's not about the carbohydrates, it's about the oils that cause the insulin resistance.
So the beginning started with you with McDougall or Bernard, or how did that work?
Bernard, actually, his book that led me to start working with that, and it was a China study that caused me to give up animal products, and that was back.
When
that was before I retired from Permanente.
So during your time at Kaiser, you were still giving out pills and drugs and surgery?
Yeah, pushing pills and procedures, basically. And then when I got when Neil Barnard spoke, he was doing a book tour, and we got to meet him. That is the book and the approach I started using with patients. And based on that success, led to presentations and more success. I mean,
yeah, but the thing is, Don, what I want to ask you is, I'm so frustrated even today with people every day telling me their doctor said that we have to eat this other way with animal products and cheese and all that dairy and all the eggs and everything, and their doctor still doesn't know. And you found out, but why did you find out? How did you find Dr. Neil Barnard's book?
Well, that was just serendipity. A neighbor gave us a copy of his book and said we had to go hear him speak. So, I mean, I don't carry water for the medical industry anymore. I mean, the definitions I like to use are primary prevention, which is preventing a condition from happening. Secondary prevention, you have a condition and you can reverse it. Or tertiary prevention, just preventing the complications. And medicine could have run off in any of those directions, but I think they've run off into both surgical and medical specialties have run off into the pushing pills and procedures, tertiary prevention. Because, a quarter of the Medicare budget is probably stents and bypass surgery. And I don't have any problem with people electing to have a stent. I just don't want to pay for it. So, I mean, even though I'm a proponent for healthcare for everybody, I'm not a proponent of Medicare for all because it's such a broken system. So at any rate, then I hooked up with McDougall, and of course, John is a very interesting guy. I got to know him and his family pretty well, along with Jeff Novick, the registered dietitian that worked with him, who's probably the best science-based registered dietitian in the country, and Doug Lyle, who works in psychology. But I also got to know the people at True North, which is right down about a mile and a half from the McDougall program. So I don't carry water for the medical industry anymore. I mean, my former employer, who provides very good retirement for me, is still pushing carbohydrates. I mean, they may have changed recently, but the last person I came across on a golf course who was a Permanente patient had gone through their course and been told to count carbohydrates, which of course is bad science. So, but there's no, as John McDougall told me very early on, when I started seeing patients with him, he said there is no money in prevention.
Yeah. But the thing is, how can we help people tell their doctor, no, there's more science out there? What do we tell them? What
Well,
do we give them?
I think people have to take it upon themselves to find out this information and then share it with their clinicians and lead by example. So that if they have diabetes or type 1, type 2 diabetes, or they have prediabetes, they can reverse the condition by following the correct science. But the science keeps coming out. I mean, we're starting to figure out stuff in fitness, for instance, as Dr. Greger once said, and we'll hear from him later today. I'm not going to spend much time on nutrition because there are a bunch of people who are going to talk who are much better at it than I am. And certainly Greger is much better at it than I am. And he writes books. I mean, he wrote a book called How Not to Die, How Not to Diet, and then How Not to Age. And his next book, which he'll start writing in a couple of years, is on inflammation. So we're learning about all this stuff that we didn't even know when I was educated in medical school back in the Middle Ages. Jim Binney's a little bit more contemporary. Andy was probably in the same cohort I was in. So, you know, it's just an interesting situation. So I think people have to take the science to their doctor, but they have to understand their doctors are, number one, very smart, and number two, have been trained to push pills, because that's where that's
Well,
what
that's
these
the
people.
Don, that I find that the biggest problem. I even have a doctor myself who's vegan, and he still works for Kaiser, and he's still pushing pills and surgery.
That's what he
Even
does, and that's what he gets rewarded for. I mean, in my final evaluation at Permanente, I was going to be dinged because my control numbers were not what they should be. And because I had taken 12 patients off my panel who were no longer diabetic.
oh my goodness.
I was told not to do that because it made the organization look bad.
Oh, that just
I mean, the government is evaluating people based on their control numbers, not their actual prevention numbers. So I think a take-home message to people who, I work for the Permanente Medical Group, which is a for-profit medical group arm of the Kaiser nonprofit arm. And I don't, I think they have a lot of opportunity they could seize. They're just not seizing it right now. So I think so in my second career, I hooked up with McDougall, and that reinforced what I learned from Barnard and my clinical experience. And John used to do these advanced study weekends where he would bring people in from all over the country and talk.
Wow, those were wonderful. Mm-hmm.
No, they were. I wish they would resurrect it. Of course, that would be up to Anthony and Heather right now, because John has passed away in June, unfortunately. But so I don't know. I mean, all I know is that when I give my classes at Renaissance, the average age is 73. And these people are often on a lot of medications, and I just give them the information, because people have to be able to ask questions, because everybody's an experiment of one. It has to work for them. It has to work for their families. I've come to the conclusion that nobody gets out alive, and everybody does 24 hours every day. And since we don't teach time management, that's why I didn't call my course Preventing Death, because nobody prevents death. I mean, we
No.
can delay it, but we can't prevent it. So delaying death, but people also want to avoid disability because, the studies in England showed that people on the average age of, they're in good health for 62 years on average, and then 14 years of poor health, 7 years of which are disabled. So they want to prevent the disability. So when I was going through the McDougall program, there's a guy named Isaac Isabo who used to teach a functional fitness course. And functional fitness is, I think, an interesting concept because it's basically strength, flexibility, aerobics, balance, and stability. And Dr. Greger gave a talk once and he said, well, we've got a nutritionfacts.org, but what we need is a fitnessfacts.org. And you teach physical fitness, don't you still, Linda?
Oh, absolutely. I teach kickboxing, and I'm a personal trainer. I teach weight training, how to do it properly, and I have all ages in there. But
Yeah.
I'm the oldest one of like 70 gyms. I'm 80 and I'm the only 80-year-old teaching this stuff. But the reason I can teach is because I've been eating this way for 36 years. But here's my other problem, Dawn, and everybody else listening. I have one client now who's 22, a football player, and he wants to change his food, but every other day he gets another pop-up saying, we have to have meat, and he's so confused, and his doctor tells him he needs meat. And I don't know how to fight the doctors. The doctors are the worst thing for me. It's one thing to have the meat and dairy and egg industry put up billions of dollars worth of ads of why young men should eat meat, and especially, and it is so frustrating. I don't know how to get around. I don't know what to tell anyone. My new clients don't know this information. I make my new clients always do physical exercise as well. I require them to do 7 days a week of walking 30 minutes, or two days a week of weight training on non-consecutive days, full body. And that's a requirement because you have to have both. But the thing is, I'm so frustrated with where do people go? I mean, they can come to me if they happen to find me, and if they happen to find you and our other doctor friends. But if they're not finding us and their own doctors aren't telling us what to do correctly, it is so frustrating.
No, I share
We
your
need
frustration.
we need more doctors to know this stuff, Don.
When you interact with your clients, I would only suggest that you sort of pay attention to where they learn their material. And there are good movies out, which you're aware of,
Yeah.
that you can point those 22-year-old
Yeah.
muscle
No,
guys.
I have 5 movies they have to watch. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So if you open the door, I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink,
Yeah, that's true.
I live with an ethical vegan. I'm more of a
Yeah.
science-based, so I have a lot
Yeah.
of support around me. These people, I, Dr. Greger says we need a fitnessfacts.org, and I don't know people who have followed Peter Attia, but he's weak on nutrition, but he pushes fitness.
Well, we need somebody who knows both.
Right. Yeah. And, he's a 50-year-old former athlete who still believes in the protein and has an interesting podcast where he interviews people. And what people have to understand about protein is it's very different than carbohydrates and fats. The protein question for me has gotten a lot more nuanced because, the 0.8 grams per kilogram recommendation is based on avoiding starvation.
Oh,
So it's about individual goals. People have to know what their individual goals are. And if you're 50, when, some people, there's a lot of individual variation. I mean, and there's a lot of luck involved. So, I mean,
Yeah, but people, if they
Alec
just,
Isabo, the guy who spoke at McDougall, who introduced me to the concept of functional fitness, he worked at True North also. And when I was there doing my second 9-day water fast, medically supervised water fast, I asked the doctor who was doing my intake, I said, well, I'd like to talk to Alec. You know, is he around? And he said, well, he's gone. I said, well, where'd he go? He said, no, he's dead. He died at
oh,
55 from lung cancer. And this is a little muscle who basically was an exercise guy who was climbing all the peaks in California. And he died, he was a non-smoker, vegan, and he died
yeah,
of lung cancer. So,
yeah.
I mean, nobody gets out alive, right?
No, I know, but our chances are greatly reduced when we eat from the plant kingdom,
Oh,
and
it's
we
all
need,
risk. You're right. It's all about risk.
yeah,
You know,
and so we want to stop the risk by helping people get to this information. Somebody asked me about I should go to PCRM. I work for PCRM. Dr. Neil Bernard is my boss, and I teach cancer and diabetes classes at Renaissance also. And so, yeah, I understand all about that, and I use their resources all the time. And once people find me, I give them all my diabetes classes, my cancer classes, everything from PCRM I can get, all the recipes, everything. So it's out there for me to give to people, but I can't reach that many people, right? It's very hard to reach enough people. That's why I'm doing this webinar right now, so I can show people that we do have doctors who understand the science behind this and are
well, I
helping
mean,
people prevent and
Jim,
reverse chronic disease.
Jim Benny's probably a much better expert at, because he's currently still practicing. Andy and I are both retired. So, you know, we've been there and done that. So, you know, it's an interesting journey. So I would just give people information and realize that you can only reach a certain number of people. The government writ large could change the reimbursement structure such that they're reimbursing health plans for prevention. But as John McDougall once told me, there's no money in prevention and everybody's out for money. So, you know, I mean, Jim works up in the Native American communities, or at least he did. I don't know where he's working now. We'll hear more from him
Well,
later.
he's coming in later to tell us all what he's doing. He's retired too
Yeah.
from
Oh, are you retired now, Jim? Congratulations. You
but
know,
he's working in the sleep clinic now.
Yeah, so I left family medicine for a lot of the issues that you're talking about. But then I went to help a 80-year-old friend of mine who's a pulmonologist slash sleep doc because I couldn't find any docs to help him out. So I went and got into sleep medicine, and I love it. And so we'll talk about more about that later. But yeah, I'm still
I mean,
in the heart of all that.
I covered
that.
sleep in my last class, and Walker's book, Why We Sleep, is a very interesting
I'll
book.
have to check it out.
Yeah, he's a sleep guy out of Berkeley. He's a PhD. So Why We Sleep. He came up with a clinical syndrome that I'd never heard about. One of those fortunately really rare ones where 40-year-old males can't even be put to sleep anesthetic wise. They can't sleep and they die after 7 months. It's really an interesting but rare, obviously, situation. So hopefully nobody on the call has that in their family. But you might want to read Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, or even go on a Peter Attia website, and he did an actual podcast with Matthew Walker. I haven't listened to that podcast, so I can't recommend it, but I would read the book, especially if you're in sleep medicine, because obviously maintaining your actual body weight at the recommended levels is the best way to avoid a lot of sleep problems, like sleep apnea and stuff like that. But, you know, we've got medicine groups like the Permanente Medical Group still. I mean, I wouldn't send anybody to their weight loss program. I just have all my patients go to Calorie Density, Eat More, Weigh Less, and Live Longer by Jeff Novick, which is available on YouTube.
Okay.
I mean, Jeff's a great registered dietitian, and he
Yeah.
basically put that on the website. He's had almost 1 million watches. So
Yeah.
hopefully people can start there, eat less calorie dense. But there are some people who, even if they eat less calorie dense, are going to not be able to lose weight. But
Yeah.
obviously, then it's worked for you. Of course, 36 years. You keep active with your training programs, and you
Yeah, but
got
I
muscle.
was Don, I was the fattest I ever was in my life 36 years ago when I was 44, when I was teaching 25 classes of aerobics per week because it was the food. Like Dr. John McDougall said, it's the food. And until I changed the food, I was a fatty and I was teaching so many classes and I couldn't figure out why I could be so fat
Were
and
you
teach
vegan
all
at
those
that
classes.
time? Were you
Hmm?
vegan at that time?
No. 44
Well,
years ago, I was not vegan. I was eating
well,
everything and mostly dairy. Dairy is the reason I had cancer. I'm pretty sure that was the number one cause of cancer for me because I was eating so much dairy, cheese, ice cream, yogurt, you name it. And now I think I'm the fittest 80-year-old that I know. Well, there's a few other people I know who are fit like me and plant, but I have muscles, baby.
yeah, I
I have
know.
muscles. And, we lose muscle as we age. So that's
Well,
why
that's
it's
an
so,
interesting situation because, as the large population goes through that I teach at Renaissance, uh, we're going to learn more about what it's like to age. So, as Dr. Greger said in his book, How Not to Age, which is his most recent book, uh, that there is no specialty that is more available for charlatans and more, to make money. I mean, everybody's making money off people by, pushing their brand. I mean, I haven't written a book or I don't have a DVD or anything. So,
I don't either.
yeah, well, you're
Yeah, it would
doing
be
the
nice.
you're doing the
You
good
know,
work. You're interacting with those 22-year-olds. The thing is that with muscle, if you have to look at the protein. Remember your protein, you need a certain amount of protein every day to avoid problems, which you can get based on plants, but you
no
your
problem.
your turnover is highest in your liver. Your liver protein turns over about on an hourly basis, and your body actually uses the protein you give it to protect the brain, the kidney, the liver, and the lungs, vital organs. And then muscle is like next down the line, and it's a higher turnover rate, collagen does. And muscle has a different cell structure than all the other cells in the body. The nucleuses are not in the cells. So the science of this stuff is very interesting, and we're starting to learn stuff as we go along, but I don't know, where it's going to head out. I mean, guys like Jim and who are younger are going to be able to find this stuff out a long time after I'm gone. Um, I
Well,
teach at Renaissance. I teach a climate course in the fall, which is 12 hours, and I teach a one-time presentation, which is an overview of my spring course, which is delaying death and avoiding disability, which is 12 hours, and it's still not
right.
long enough. But I'm thinking about adding a seventh class next in the spring semester, and then I do a 1 hour talk on the climate overview of the climate. So I've sort
Oh, I
of
love
settled
that.
into my third career. The two biggest things I see coming are climate and AI.
AI.
And
What's the
AI,
problem with that? What's wrong with AI? Is that a
there's
problem?
nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's just a new technology, and the fact that the machines are going to be a lot smarter than we are.
Yeah.
And there are people who are in this field who feel that there's a 99% chance that AI is going to get rid of humans.
Oh,
They're going to
that,
find out they don't need us. We're just screwing things up. Why would they keep us? I
oh my
mean,
goodness, that's
but
scary.
yeah, it is. It is very scary. It's almost so. At one of the McDougall Advanced Study weekends, I came across Dan Pereiro. So I like to use his cartoons for my talks, with his permission, of course. And the best one for climate is the doctor in the exam room, and the world is his patient. And he says the bad news is you've got a severe case of the humans. The good news The good news is they've about run their course and you're going to be feeling better soon.
Oh, no.
So I'm not worried about the planet. The planet's going to do fine. The species is a little bit more, of a concern for me. So I don't know. But at any rate, how are we doing time-wise, by the way, Shakar? I
We
assume,
have, it's time for questions, but I want to show you this. Can you see it?
yeah, I like that cartoon too.
You know what it says? Can everybody
Yeah.
see? Raise your hand if you can see it. Okay, what it says is, I guess it's a teacher or something talking, the lunch lady is talking to the kids. And it says, and remember, kids, not only is milk a fattening health hazard, but when you're drinking milk, it means a sad and lonely calf isn't getting any. I love that.
I mean, dairy's probably, we're the only species that consumes another animal's milk after we're
I
weaned.
know, it's ridiculous.
I mean, and the patients can get the concept that they're not baby cows. I don't know if the pediatricians have got the memo yet, because most of the people I come across, their kids turn age 2 and then milk is okay.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
but
So I tell patients that dairy is probably the first place to start if they want to improve their diet. There are a lot of resources, as you know, out there to support that, but basically, the problem is that the cheese industry has us broken up into 5 segments. There are the cheese cravers who eat cheese straight out of the package every day. That's 20% of cheese consumers. 20% are cheese enhancers. They put cheese on everything. As Neil Barnard pointed out, casein is metabolized to casomorphins in the gut. So these
crack
40%.
cocaine, it's like crack cocaine.
Exactly. I mean, it's an addiction. And you can get away from addictions. And Doug Lyle talks great, does a lot of good videos on that. He's a co-author with Alan Goldhammer at True North of The Pleasure Trap.
Yeah,
They were
very
both
good.
friends in high school. It's an excellent book. It says basically we're just systems that are designed to eat food, have sex, and reproduce, and then conserve energy. That's what we do. That's the pleasure trap. Food, sex, and energy. Unless, of course, we're a male, and when it's sex, food, and then energy consumption. You've
Okay,
heard
if
that
there
joke
any,
before.
I'm gonna ask if there's any questions, okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Questions?
Please, let me know if you have any questions. I know I have some. I want to know a couple things, like, what do you eat in a day?
Whatever my wife feeds me.
And what might that be? I
Well,
know
at this point, we've changed a lot since I went vegan in 1958. We were vegetarian for a number of years, and we didn't know about dairy and eggs at that point. But once we learned about it and we read the China study, we went vegan. But since then, we've been more migrating toward the True North approach, which is a SOS vegan, which is no salt, oil, or sugar, which is a little bit harder, especially if you go out. It's a little bit easier. It's hard still if you do it at home, if you prepare your own food. But if you go out, it's almost impossible. But, there's a Paracelsus was a physician.
I have my clients know how to go out. I teach them how.
Yeah,
Be
no, and Mary McDougall used to do that as part of the McDougall program.
Yeah.
They'd go out and for a long time, a lot of the restaurants in Santa Rosa offered McDougall options for people who wanted to eat.
Well,
They,
like in Sacramento, we're lucky. We have restaurants now that do SOS free vegan food for us, and you have to go and ask them to do it, give them recipes, and they will do it. They want our business.
such as, what are your favorite restaurants in Sacramento?
Well, my favorite restaurant was Zest Kitchen, but I also like Himalaya, organic vegan. But unfortunately, they decided to put something new in there, and they're going to kick them out. So we're all trying to find a place for Zest Kitchen to go. But the Himalaya organic vegan organic restaurant here in Sacramento is they do SOS free, no problem for the whole menu.
Now, that's an interesting restaurant. We like to go there because it's very simple. They only have one thing on the menu. You get either a large plate or a small plate or a moderate plate.
Yeah, no,
But
it's very good.
I mean,
I have
it's a
another
very interesting situation.
I have another question. Chris, it's Dan Piaro. How do you spell
Dan Ferraro.
Dan Ferraro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
And Linda, we have a question. Joyce is saying I have almost bone on her knees. Where did it go? Very low cartilage. Is there any advice for her?
Well, the total knee replacement, we're getting very good at that, but that's an example of tertiary medicine. And sometimes if people don't take care of themselves, the horse is out of the barn, and I would say that with little cartilage, it's kind of hard to say. I've never had a patient build cartilage back, but clearly you want to protect your joints by eating correctly. And, good luck with that. I'm sorry I don't have more of an answer, but osteoporosis is something that, the doctors use to push pills and is a concern. But
I can say something about that.
okay, go ahead.
I took they gave me too much levothyroxine. I found out that I had thyroid cancer years ago, 36 years ago, and they gave me all this levothyroxine, but they gave me too much. And that particular pill gives you osteoarthritis, and I have it in one knee. I did not get a knee replacement 2 years ago, and I still teach kickboxing and step because I decided to keep my knee because I found out people replace that thing every 8 years sometimes. I'm not going there.
But
So
also the death rate is 1 in 200 from that procedure.
yeah, people, they don't tell you that.
No, they don't. No, they
So
don't.
I don't recommend knee replacement unless you're on your deathbed.
Well, I always tell my patients to hold on to their original parts for as long as possible. And that's probably good advice. But as far as the knee goes, you need to maintain a strong musculature around the knee, especially the quadriceps, to protect the knee. And I would certainly try that first, because even if you end up going to a knee replacement, you will do better as a fit person.
Exactly.
But you can be a sick vegan. I mean, Coca-Cola is vegan.
Oh yeah. Oil is vegan, alcohol is vegan. Yeah.
John McDougall has done newsletters on the sick vegan and the fat vegan. So, we know about that stuff. But if anybody has any specific questions, so I'm sorry I didn't answer.
Here's another question.
Better. Go ahead.
I'm losing a lot of bone in my mouth and teeth. What should I do? What should I increase in my food?
I mean, if you want to increase your calcium, you can do that with plants. I would go on nutritionfacts.org and sort of look up. One of the nice things about nutritionfacts.org is you can go to browse all topics and look up stuff like bone loss and things like that. The only problem is if you go to something like dairy or diabetes, you're liable to get 100 to 200 videos. It's hard to know. I mean, he doesn't provide the clinical perspective that McDougall did. Of course, McDougall worked for 40 years until he turned things over to Anthony Lim, who's now his medical director at the McDougall programs, who's an excellent family doc.
Another statement, which I'd like to talk about, that Janet Guerin talks about. Her mom was diagnosed with osteoporosis when she was in the 80s. She overcame it with flax oil and vegan glucosamine. And I eat flax seed. Flax oil is not good for anybody. So I eat ground up flax seeds, 3 tablespoons every day. And so that's why
it's very individual. I mean,
but oil is not good for your heart in any event. So
oil's not good. I mean, but it depends. It's like Paracelsus, the doctor in the 15th century, said everything's a poison. It's the dose that makes the poison. So I can kill you with oxygen or water. It's just an individual requirement. So everybody's an individual, an experiment of one. And you've got to try things out to see if it works. So that
The oils hurt your heart. So I just can't do oils. I won't do oils because I had a very bad heart too before.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's individual. There might, as Michael Clapper, who's a former colleague of mine, said, there may be somebody in the population that does well on 3 eggs a week, but he doesn't know that, and there's no way to test for it.
Well, then there's the ethical part of that one. So,
Well, of course. I mean, that's the nice thing about going vegan. I can definitely say that being vegan is better for the animals and better for the planet. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But you can be a sick vegan or a fat vegan. So the devil's always in the details, and I'm sure Andy and Jim can weigh in on those situations a little later. But I'm sorry, I'm not answering the question really well. But as far as osteoporosis goes, the best resource I've ever read or heard is Amy Lanou's book, Building Bone Density, Building Bone Vitality. It's a little paperback, and she goes through all the studies, but basically
I have that book. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good book. I mean,
Great book.
She did a good presentation at McDougall.
Yes, she does. Yeah, I really like her a lot. I have that book, Building Bone Vitality by Amy Lanou, Lanou.
Well, that's a great book for people who are concerned about osteoporosis.
Yeah, it's good for anybody who want to keep their bone. I love what John McDougall always said too. Taking a vitamin D pill may take away the holes in your bones, but it makes it like chalk and it can break. You need to get sunlight between 10 and 2. And that's what I tell everybody. So is the best way to do it. And get your exercise and your sunlight. And there you have it. Dawn, we're at the end of your talk. So
okay, great. Who's up next? No.
Next
I would just tell people to subscribe to nutritionfacts.org. And if they're interested in fitness, they can go to Peter Attia and look up some of the podcasts he does with some of the excellent. But the functional fitness thing, the thing that got added, I mean, I knew about aerobics and strength and flexibility, but I'd never heard about balance and stability. Of course, when you're young, like Jim Benny is, you don't have to worry about balance and stability, or your kids, Jim. Let's say you may be older now, but the kids are not worried about the fitness, but things change as you get older.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell people not to age, but I guess it beats the alternative, right?
Well, Dawn, thank you so much for being here with us today. So appreciate you, and keep up the good work. You're doing so much work. Are you working harder now than you were before, like me?
No. I don't push. I don't go in, and I'm not part of the treadmill of 28 patients a day with their endless lists and, in a large organization. I mean, I was trained as a family medicine doc, so I was actually trained to be a doctor in a small community. Then I went to a large company. Go figure, But they're still trying to figure out primary care. I wish them luck, but I think they're with the doctors. They've got, Andy will know more about it because he was on the board of Permanente. I was just local leadership, but I think the doctors have a learning disability actually.
Okay.
Must be a virus we got in medical school.
I'm gonna call on you to help me change the nutrition program at Kaiser. Get ready for that.
Oh, good luck on that. I mean,
well, I need a doctor behind me for this.
Okay, well,
Dr. Clapper is going to help me too.
Okay, well, Michael's a good one. Michael's been in this space for a long time, and he's now up in Canada, right? Working.
No, I think he's in Florida. I don't know.
No, he was in Florida. He moved to Texas, and now recently he works in Vancouver, I think. Well, he works in British Columbia.
Okay, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he's up there now. Just like Gregor moved to Vancouver and then back to Virginia. He's down back in Virginia.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Yeah. But anyway, thank you, Dawn. We really appreciate you. Fantastic.
And anybody wants to ask me any questions, they can send me donforr@gmail. That's my personal email. I'd be glad to answer any questions because I get out on the golf course now and I only play at times when old people play. And, they always ask me questions about things. So I tell them we're just going to play golf and I'll send them an email about it. So I've got emails for just about every condition.
Well, I just put your
Yeah, put it in
address.
chat.
I put it in chat. Thank
Yeah.
you again.
You're
You're
welcome.
fantastic.
I'm going to listen
And
to the
I
other
will
guy.
see you soon too.
you.
Thank you, Don. Okay, next we have, oh my goodness, another famous guy, Dr. Andrew Klonike. He's just amazing too. Can you hear me, Andy?
I can.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Tell you about Andy. He also has a very long list, so forgive me. I have to read it. It's way too much for my brain to remember.
And that's what you get for having old people on who are accomplished.
So, Andrew Klonike is a doctor, MD, and a physician for 49 years. He's board certified in family practice, nuclear medicine, and lifestyle medicine. He had multiple careers in the Air Force, emergency medicine, family practice, administrative medicine, nuclear medicine, and lifestyle medicine. He considers the most important one, lifestyle. Because it helps prevent and reverse chronic diseases, our American diseases, like heart disease and strokes and diabetes and obesity and various cancers. And he wrote a book about it called Bypass. I highly recommend it. You'll be shocked about a doctor telling you what he didn't find out in med school. It's amazing. And his wife, Catherine, also did the recipes in there and is a wonderful human being helping with that book and everything else. Wonderful lady. So with that, I'm going to have you start, Dr. Klonike, and tell us what you're going to talk about.
Okay, thank you, Linda. I have a PowerPoint I'd like to share.
Oh, I'd love that.
Do I just hit the share button?
Yes.
Hit the share button and please check the share audio also.
Whoops. Okay. I don't see a share audio button.
Right when you click it, share, it comes up.
It should be on the right hand column about halfway down.
Yeah.
Oh, here it
It's
goes.
a
Share sound.
checkbox.
Share sound.
That's the one. Thank you.
Okay. So, at any rate, so I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I titled it "How to Thrive," or what your doctor may not have told you. And I want to start by giving a brief presentation. Let's see, slideshow. So I want to start by presenting a real patient case presentation. And for full disclosure, this patient is me. So at age 60, I decided I should do what I've been telling all my patients to do, and that is to go get their lipid panel checked. And I think I want you to notice several things. First of all, please notice my weight, 260. Ever since college, I've been overweight and tried multiple different diets without success. But when you look at my cholesterol and the LDL portion, they're both significantly elevated. So I figured I need a doctor. So I decided I'd go to the head physician in the PHASE program at Kaiser. PHASE stands for Prevent Heart Attacks and Strokes Every Day.
What year was that, Andy?
15 years ago.
Okay.
So what's that, 2009? So at any rate, I went to see the physician. He said, okay, well, let's start you on some drugs. I'll put you on a statin. And being a little bit of a wiseacre, I said, well, what's wrong with diet and exercise? To which he said, well, you can do that if you want, but come back in 2 months and I'll put you on medication. So I went on my merry way, and 2 months later, diet and exercise had trimmed my weight down to a robust 240. My cholesterol dropped a little bit, but the LDL didn't change at all. And my doctor also snuck in a fasting blood sugar, and clearly at 170, that's type 2 diabetes. So I reluctantly agreed to start on a statin, and I refused the diabetes pills and continued with my diet and exercise. And it helped. It continued to help. I lost some more weight. My blood sugar did fall, but it was still elevated. And the statins worked wonders on the cholesterol. But then something unusual happened. About 2 weeks later, I had 2 episodes on 2 different days of this very unusual sensation in my upper chest when I exercised. And I realized that that was angina pectoris, chest pain of cardiac origin. So I signed up for a treadmill study, which was markedly abnormal, which bought me a cardiac angiogram, which was also markedly abnormal, which bought me a 6-vessel coronary artery bypass surgery. So the interesting thing is that I got signed up for the cardiac rehab program at Kaiser. And my cardiologist said, well, you don't need to go. You're a doctor. But I said, well, I'm also a patient. I want to go. So I went, and it was interesting that the nurse that gave the program was talking about food. And she said, now, I have to tell you the official Kaiser line, which is a American Heart Association low-fat diet. But it's not really low fat because it's 30% fat. And if it was up to me, I would do a whole foods plant-based diet. And that was the first time I had ever heard those words. A couple of days later in the mail, I got 2 books sent to me by a friend. Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. Wow, reverse heart disease. And also the China study. Well, I was very interested, so I did read both of these. And one of the first graphics that I saw in the China study was this one. And this was the rate of death from heart attacks in men aged 55 to 59 across 20 countries. And there was a 1-to-1 relationship with the ingestion of animal protein. So I really took that to heart. And I go, well, I better look into this plant-based diet. And we did. My wife and I, we were on our way. She supported me. And, the results were fantastic. And it was interesting because now the weight just came off. My blood sugar normalized, my cholesterol, both the total and the bad cholesterol, just plummeted. And in fact, they went down so far, I decided, well, I'm going to cut my statin in half, which I did. The cholesterol continued to drop a little bit more, so I stopped my statin at that point, and obviously I had no need for diabetes medication. And I got down to 184 pounds, which now took me out of the overweight category, reversed diabetes, and normalized cholesterol and LDL. I was both very happy and very upset because, and I was happy, obviously, to have such good result, but I was also very upset because I felt I should have known about these things. I should have been taught this in medical school. And I was also angry at all of my doctors, who I considered to be good doctors, but none of them had told me this. And instead of giving me the option of changing my diet, I got subjected to a fairly significant medical procedure that potentially was lethal. So we wrote a book about this, and if anyone's interested, it is available on Amazon. So what is thriving? Well, it's probably a little bit different definition for everyone, but I'm thinking that there's a lot of factors. You want to be active. You want to be able to do what you want to do, travel, walk, play golf, pickleball, do exercises. You want to be healthy. You want to feel well. You want to sleep okay. You want to have a normal weight. You don't want to be taking all these pills, and you don't want to be going to the hospital or the doctor. You want your labs to be normal. And you want to be present. You want to be present for your friends, your family. Maybe you have grandkids. The other thing we need to define is, what is this whole food plant-based diet? Well, the first thing is that it's the new 4 food groups: beans and lentils, grains, vegetables, and fruit. But it also includes avoiding certain things, sugar, oil, and salt, especially saturated fat. And if you already have coronary artery disease or type 2 diabetes, you probably should limit your good fats to no more than 10% of your total caloric intake. You avoid animal protein, beef, pork, chicken, dairy, eggs, fish, and you avoid processed foods. It's not real food. and all the good stuff in food has been stripped out. Why do we die early? The definition of dying early is dying before age 80. And the biggest reason, the gold bar with the number 18 on it, diet activity patterns are the biggest reason why we die earlier than we need to. So if it's diet, what kind of food are we talking about? Well, if we look at dying early across multiple countries and look at what kind of diet is consumed, we get this kind of a graphic. And if you look at the USA, the light gray bar, that's the percentage of deaths from heart disease and cancer. That's almost 80%. And if you look at the diet, the percentage of calories from unrefined plant foods is about 12%. That means 88% of our diet is either fake food, that is processed food, or animal protein. Whereas if you look to the far right in Laos, they only have a 5% chance of dying early from heart disease and cancer, and over 90% of their calories comes from unrefined plant foods. In other words, from a whole food, plant-based diet without refined foods. Now, in the China study as well, this is a graphic that shows the incidence of colon cancer as related to daily meat consumption. And you can see that there's a fairly one-to-one relationship. As you eat more and more meat, the chances of getting colon cancer goes up. And the same for breast cancer in women. As more animal fat is ingested, and the only way you're going to get animal fat is if you eat animal protein, it comes along. Even chicken breast, which is considered low fat, is over 25% fat. But as you eat more and more animal fat, the death rate from breast cancer goes up. Now, we've known this in the medical literature for some time. The Europeans did a study on over 23,000 Germans, and they looked at 4 lifestyle factors: not being obese, in other words, BMI less than 30, just a half an hour of physical activity per day, not smoking, and healthy dietary principles, which meant a high intake of fruits, vegetables, and whole grain bread, i.e., a whole food plant-based diet, and very low intake of meat. And they looked at the development of diabetes, stroke, heart attacks, and cancers. And what they found was amazing. If you look at diabetes, if you just followed one of those healthy factors, your chances of developing diabetes were 1/3 of the population. And if you followed all 4 healthy lifestyles, your chances of developing diabetes were 1/20th as compared to the general population. And the same holds true for myocardial infarction, stroke, and cancer. Following healthy lifestyle factors decreases your chances of getting any of these. The Seventh-day Adventists in Southern California were studied, and they looked at the association between diet, cancer, and ischemic heart disease, that is, heart attacks. Now, the Seventh-day Adventists in general are also already a little healthier because they don't smoke and they don't drink. 30% of the people were vegetarian, no fish, poultry, or meat. 20% were semi-vegetarian, no more than once per week as far as animal protein was concerned, and 49% were non-vegetarian. Now, the Seventh-day Adventist diet versus the standard American diet is already healthier in that it contains more fiber, and while it has the same amount of fat, it's more likely to be unsaturated than saturated. So what did they find out? Well, there was a 1-to-1 correlation between obesity and meat consumption. High blood pressure and diabetes were twice as common in the non-vegetarian. Arthritis and rheumatism were higher in non-vegetarian. And beef consumption greater than 3 times a week increased the risk of a fatal heart attack by a factor of 2.3. Colon cancer and prostate cancer were higher in non-vegetarians, and there was an increase in blood cancer with meat 3 times per week. The good news, eating nuts and whole grains decreased cardiac mortality by 1/3. Risk of colon and prostate cancer was reduced by eating more fruits and tomatoes and less animal protein. Legumes ameliorated some of the risk of colon cancer. Pancreatic cancer was also reduced by consumption of fruits and legumes. And vegetarian men and women lived longer than their non-vegetarian counterparts. So the conclusions from the study were diet does have an effect on longevity and risk of chronic disease. Vegetarians had a lower risk of obesity, hypertension, diabetes, arthritis, colon cancer, prostate cancer, and heart attacks. Nuts and whole grains protected against heart disease, whereas consumption of beef was hazardous. Fruit and legumes were protective against a number of cancers, whereas meat increases risk of colon and bladder cancer. Why is this? Well, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and grains contain phytosterols and unsaturated fats that lower cholesterol. Fiber decreases cholesterol and protects against colon cancer. And most importantly, it feeds the gut microbiome that produce anti-inflammatory compounds. To have a proper and defensive lining along the intestinal tract requires fiber so that toxins and bacteria ingested don't get into our system. Vegetables, fruits, nuts, and grains have antioxidants that prevent the oxidation of LDL cholesterol so that it can't infiltrate our arteries. And it also prevents the oxidative damage to DNA, which produces the mutations that lead to cancerous cells. Cruciferous vegetables have chemicals that detoxify carcinogens and inhibit formation from procarcinogens. Meat, on the other hand, contains no fiber or phytochemicals, and man's favorite way of producing meat produces procarcinogenic chemicals, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and heterocyclic amines. Caldwell Esselstyn, who wrote the book Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, proved this at the Mayo Clinic or at the Cleveland Clinic as well. He had 198 patients that he put on his dietary intervention, and 89% or 177 were able to adhere, which belies the fact that most physicians will say, oh, patients can't follow this diet. Well, almost 90% did. And out of these 177, 144 got better. 105 had symptom reduction, and 22%, almost a quarter, had actually reversal of their disease. Only a very few got worse, 10%, whereas in the non-adherent groups, 2/3, 62% got worse. And the most interesting thing is that there was actually evidence on heart studies. You can see the gap on the left, the little green area, whereas the rest of the heart looks red, fills in after treatment. And more significantly on the right, the artery that was narrowed completely clears after 32 months on a whole foods plant-based diet. Definite evidence of reversal. A few other things that need to be stated is that, osteoporosis has come up, and the incidence of osteoporosis decreases as you increase the amount of vegetable protein in the diet. So at a ratio of 5:1 vegetable to animal protein, you're almost at 0 in terms of hip fracture incidence, whereas at the ratio of 1 or less, the incidence of hip fracture goes up significantly. In terms of exercise, just 1.5 hours per week, which is not a lot, actually reduces all-cause mortality by 2%. Now, you can exercise a lot more if you want, but the biggest gain comes in that first, 20 minutes of exercise. We talked about obesity, and probably the best way to lose weight is to eat foods that are low in calories but high in mass. Oil is not. To feel full, you have to fill your stomach. So most diets don't work because you don't fill your stomach. If you're going to rely on animal protein, 400 calories of chicken barely reaches the about 1/4% full. However, if you're eating vegetables, grains, legumes, you can easily fill your stomach with, 400 to 500 calories, which is really about all you need at a meal. The other thing that a whole foods plant-based diet does is it helps the planet. Hawken et al. Wrote a book called Drawdown, and they listed 100 solutions for reducing global warming. But the first 10 actually would produce 50% of the reduction. And number 4 on the list was a plant-rich diet. So not only is it good for you, but it's also good for the planet. Now, this was in the New York Times. Cancer increasing among meat eaters, particularly among foreign-born using foods derived from diseased animals. Adams' Chicago figures, on the other hand, Italians and Chinese, practically vegetarians, show the lowest mortality of all. This is not written this year. This is written in the early 1900s. We have known this all along. And it's important that this message be spread. Thank you very much.
Woo! Thank you, Andrew. This is a wonderful presentation. I read his book, Bypass. It's fantastic. And his wife, Catherine, also has great recipes in there for you. So I recommend buying that, and you'll find out his journey. And it was an amazing journey. And we have some, well, let's see, what time is it? We have a few more minutes to talk. We have a few more minutes. So
there is a question about the weight loss drugs, and I did want to say something about that. You hear of a lot of people getting injections of Wegovy or Ozempic, which are glucagon-like protagonists, and yes, they will cause you to lose weight, and that is some of a help because obesity, particularly visceral obesity, is very inflammatory, which unleashes a lot of the chemicals that are responsible for the diseases that we have. But that's only one factor, and you're not removing the other factors if you don't change your diet. Heme iron in red meat is inflammatory, as are the saturated fats. TMAO from eating red meat and ahi tuna and metabolism of the carnitine in these products is atherogenic. So while it does work for weight loss, it doesn't resolve all of the other issues that are responsible for disease. You didn't get fat by not taking Ozempic. You got there from the diet that you're on. And so the only way you're going to get off of it properly is by consuming the correct diet and decreasing the inflammation within your system. There's a great book. I know Don mentioned that Gregor was writing a book on inflammation, but Shilpa Ravella, who is a gastroenterologist, wrote this book, A Silent Fire, the story of inflammation, diet, and disease. And it's an absolute excellent book, very understandable for anyone to read, but it really delves down into what inflammation does for you in a negative kind of way.
Oh, that's excellent. I get so tired of listening to these ads on TV, people taking a shot or taking a pill, to lose the weight. And the ads are nonstop. And I just want to crawl through the TV and shout and go, no, you have to change your food. So thank you for explaining that. We have a couple of statements. Project Jan said, Project Drawdown, latest figures show plant-rich diets and reducing food waste and the number 1 and 2 most impactful thing individuals can do to reduce their carbon footprint. Way more heat than heat pumps or electric cars.
Well, that makes a whole lot of sense because of all of the environmental damage done by industrial farming and the industrial raising of animals. Think of, if if nobody bought meat or any animal products, there would be no need for these types of farming practices that release a lot of carbon dioxide and methane into the air and also are destroying a lot of the, say, the forests that are carbon sinks. So I think that that's true.
45% of our earth is being used to either grow food for or farm these animals, and the cruelty is unbelievable. I need everybody to wake up and stop eating the animals for that reason, for no other reason. We got to save our planet. And we have to
Absolutely.
save the cruelty to the animals. Having them confined like this and taking their babies away from their mothers, no one would allow a human to do that. You wouldn't even allow that done to your dog. But somehow
Yeah.
those other animals we don't see, it's all not transparent. They keep it so hidden. And the advertising tells you it's all happy animals. Well, it isn't.
Yeah.
I
There's
just
a
want to
couple
add
other
that.
questions. Yeah. Somebody got a tablespoon of olive oil from her mother every night at bedtime. And so the question is, what about that? She says, I've never had any heart problems. Um, there's so many factors involved in the production of heart disease, but vascular dysfunction is one. And I think that all oils really cause vascular function to a certain degree. So it's good that she doesn't have any heart problems. Maybe the rest of her diet is such that she's protective, but we tend to avoid oils in our cooking. We do broth or what, even just water.
You don't need oil, and it's kind of a misnomer. People think olive oil is the better oil, which it probably is, but not enough
Yeah,
to keep your heart from destroying the endothelial cells. It
yeah.
destroys
Well, that's it.
endothelial cells.
Yeah. Well, it's better than lard, but it's not better than no oil at
Yeah,
all.
right,
Uh,
right.
then there was another comment that someone says that her plant-based cardiologist said that it took years to reverse disease. But I think on the slide that I showed from Dr. Esselstyn, and I mean, that artery looked normal after 32 months. So yeah, that's years. I guess that's 2 years and 2 years and 8 months. So I guess it is years, but still, there's no drug, no stent, no surgery, no nothing that can do something like that. And it's just incredible that a change in diet can. And I think that's really, why not give it a try, for crying out loud? I sure would have, I think I would have, hopefully, but I didn't know, you know. So I ended up having a procedure which I had a 5% chance of either dying or having a stroke. Who wants that?
And you didn't learn any of that in med school.
No. We had
No.
1 hour of nutrition and it was mostly about vitamins. But
Oh,
it still hasn't changed. I talk about this at the California North State University Med School in Elk Grove, but I only get an
mhm.
hour, and I beg for
Yeah.
more and more time. But so it's
Yeah,
really up to the
Andy, we need you to start training the doctors. You need to have a whole, I don't know, program for that. Training these doctors so they get this information, you know? We really do.
right.
Um, Margie Burton said her dad ate olive oil every day of his life on his yogurt for lunch, and he died at 62. Margie, my dad died at 62, too, also. Yes. And someone said, how much exercise, how should you determine your target rate for exercise? Rochelle asked.
Right. Yeah, your maximum heart rate is 220 minus your age. And then if you want to get into aerobic exercise, you multiply your target heart rate by 85%, 0.85.
Thank
So
you.
if you're 70, your maximum heart rate is 150. And I don't know, whatever 0.85 of that is.
So Andy, what are you eating today?
Um, so uh, in the morning, I might have I bake my own bread. So I have I grind my own wheat kernels. So I do
Oh,
a
wow,
slice
you
of whole
make
wheat bread
bread?
with some, yeah. So I might have a slice of that with peanut butter. I'm very careful. I don't buy peanut butter that has added palm oil with bananas or oatmeal with fruit or quinoa with fruit. Uh, at noon, maybe sometimes a tempeh sandwich with roasted eggplant and roasted red pepper or leftovers from dinner. Dinner type, Kathy and I alternate what we cook. I made vegan moussaka last night. Uh, she does a
What
great
is that?
bean,
What is in vegan masaka?
potatoes, eggplant, TVP, tomatoes, and a cashew crema on top.
Whoa,
It's very good. Go to
delicious.
veganmyheart.com. The recipe's there.
Okay.
Uh, she does a great black bean and squash casserole.
Yeah.
We do a tofu, eggplant, mushroom curry, tacos with baked tofu, eggplant, zucchini, mushroom. Uh,
Nice. Andy, people think soy is bad for them. Can you explain why it's not?
yeah, that's a real bugaboo. The medical literature is fairly clear that women who ate a lot of soy in childhood have a much lower rate of breast cancer than those who didn't. Women who switch to soy versus animal protein after breast cancer diagnosis have a lower recurrence rate. And somehow, since soy contains weak estrogens, phytoestrogens, everyone's got this idea that they're very stimulatory to breast tissue. Now, just intuitively, that doesn't make sense. The Japanese eat the most soy of anybody on earth. And if phytoestrogens really stimulated breast growth, the people in Japan shouldn't be able to walk upright. They eat so much soy.
Well,
And so,
the phytoestrogen is supposed to block the harmful estrogen.
well, that was going to be my last comment, that the reason that phytoestrogen, people who eat soy have better survival is that it blocks the effects of endogenous estrogen. So now there are some people who are truly allergic to soy, but that's neither
Yeah.
here nor there. But in terms of whether it's a risk factor in breast cancer, it certainly isn't.
Well, my friend Jose asked, is soy bad for men because it promotes estrogen? Tell him about the phytoestrogen.
Yeah, no, I don't see that. I mean, again, it should be intuitively, that should not be a question. I mean, how many Japanese men have you seen with large breasts? None, and they get more
Yeah, it
phytoestrogens.
actually blocks, according to Dr. Neil Bernard, it blocks the estrogen, the harmful estrogen. That's why when people have cancer, I tell them to eat soy products.
Yeah.
Not
Um,
isolated soy, but soy products.
Now, here's an interesting comment. I thought no nuts for heart disease per Dr. Esselstyn. Rochelle Wilder said that. Now, it's interesting. Esselstyn stayed here at the house when he presented at Kaiser, and I made him oatmeal, and he asked for nuts. And I go, what? But you said no nuts. He says, well, he said, I have to say no nuts because people eat them by the handfuls. If you
Oh,
eat, if you can actually limit your nut consumption to what is considered one serving, you can have nuts. They're good for you.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
for people,
people buy the nut butters and then they eat gobs of it.
yeah. So someone asked about the site. I don't know if my bread recipe is on our site. The site is veganmyheart.com, but I could get the bread recipe on there.
And Jose wants to know if he can still have salt in his food even though he has high blood pressure.
I would say it depends on, they say if you're overweight and have high blood pressure, it may be the added sugar. If you're normal weight and have high blood pressure, salt is a factor. So we actually don't use salt in our cooking. And you kind of, uh, you kind of get used to that. Your taste buds change, and you don't need the salt anymore. I mean, that's one of the problems with processed foods too. We'll get a
Yeah,
few things at Trader Joe's, and I'm always looking. They have some entrees there that sound pretty good, but typically, um, they're just loaded with salt. I mean, there is a nutrition label on these things, which I call a warning label because it tells you about all the bad stuff. But
yeah,
I do look at those, and I look at calories. I look at percent fat. I like to keep fat under 10%. I look if there's added sugar, and there's almost always
yeah,
added sugar. I don't buy
yeah,
that stuff,
yeah.
because added sugar goes to our livers. It gets converted to free fatty acids. The leading cause of liver failure in America today is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, from
Mhm.
eating too much fat and too much added sugar. So,
People don't
um,
understand that fatty liver disease can cause cirrhosis of the liver.
that's right. Yeah. You
Fatty liver disease, they just think it's fatty liver, but they don't realize no alcohol whatsoever, and you can have cirrhosis of the liver from eating all this fat,
hmm.
saturated.
You
So
know,
I like to tell people that.
someone had made the comment that what are some essential foods to eat so that we can, um, so that we can get all the nutrients that are required for the human diet. And I think that, there are some foods that are complete proteins, like quinoa is a complete protein, but what you really have to do though is you need to eat just a variety of plant foods, and you're going to get all the nutrition that you need. So I was looking for an old slide that I had about longevity and fruit and vegetable consumption, and people who eat 5 fruits and vegetables per day versus those who eat none live 3 years longer. And really, you should eat probably about 5 to 10 fruits and vegetables per day. And if you eat all of those things, you're going to get really everything that you need. The only
Yeah.
supplement potentially that you need is vitamin B12. And
Yes, thank you.
then the reason that you need that is because we've we've been over farmed, and B12 is made by bacteria. And the only reason that animals have B12 is they're eating the bacteria. And there was a time when plant foods contained enough B12, but not today, the way it's over
Yeah,
farmed. Some of
yeah,
the there are some I kind of enjoy reading Michael Pollan, and particularly his short one. He has food rules,
yeah,
and uh, in defense of food, and he 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 just kind of lays it out really well. Like in defense of
yeah,
food, he says, "Eat real food, mostly plants." I mean, that's a
yeah.
good rule. And then the other one, he says, if it has more than 5 ingredients, don't eat it. And if it has anything that your
Well,
grandmother
I
couldn't.
don't agree with that one because I put a lot of stuff on my because they're
Well,
all good
that's
ingredients.
true. That's true. But when you look at a nutrition label and see what they put in there, there's a lot of little tricks. Like I was looking at something, um, uh, I was looking at something, and the list of ingredients is from most to least. But what they'll do to make it look like it's like oil, particularly, they might use 2 or 3 different kinds of oil. So yes, very small amounts of all through, but you add them all together, and actually oil is the maximum ingredient.
Yeah. Okay, another question. I'm going to answer it first though, because he says, "What do you think of naturopathic approach to health?" Let me say mine first. I have never yet, to date, found one naturopathic doctor who doesn't eat animals. Sorry, that's just the way I found it. So I don't like the naturopathic field, but you go ahead and answer you now.
I, I don't know enough about it to give an answer.
Oh, well, I
So
have an answer because I have naturopaths who always trying to get on my clients, tell them they have to eat this chicken or this fish or something. They do not know about the plant-based human diet. And it
yeah.
makes me just so
Well,
upset all the time.
I think that I think one of the points that you were trying to make, and I agree with that, is that, patients really need to be their own advocates, but they have to be very careful. Like
Yeah.
I have a neighbor that just had bypass surgery, and I'm always
I
on
hope you
him,
gave him your book.
and it's ridiculous because he sends me these podcasts and he's listening to this guy who's a tech guy. He's no training in nutrition at all, but he's expounding on what he thinks a good diet should be, and it's very meat centric. Um, and also this friend uses a lot of olive oil, and I say,
Uh,
don't do that. And he goes, well, I like the taste, And I said, well, people like cocaine too because it makes them high, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. I mean,
yeah.
but anyway, um,
Um, you know, they want to know how to reach you.
oh, is
And
my
that way,
last
and
name?
your website, and your website.
Oh, I don't have a website. I'm not.
Oh, well, you said something about look it up on some
Oh,
website.
yeah. Well, my wife has a blog where she shares our recipe. That's
Oh, blog. We
My
need
Heart.
that.
Yeah, veganmyheart.com, one word.
And
And if
my,
somebody really wants to ask me a question, they can send me an email, klonike@hotmail.
okay, wait, heart.com. And your email is Andrew Klonike? No,
No, just last name, Klonike. Klonike at
Klonike.
Hotmail.
Klonike at hotmail.com. Okay.
I think, yeah, somebody mentioned, says part of the problem of our society is we don't value spending time cooking. So yeah, it does take a little extra time, but there are things that you can do to help. An Instant Pot is a nice way to go. You can cook multiple servings at one setting. Um, it's nice if you have a partner that's willing to share. We
Yeah.
uh, one night Kathy cooks, one night I cook, and that's very helpful.
Yeah, that is.
And if you don't have a partner in the house, find a partner out of the house.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
week Margie's going to cook all my meals. Next week I'll cook all the meals from, or something like that.
Yeah,
So
good idea.
and also I think it's like everything else is the more you practice, the better you get. And pretty
Sure.
soon, I mean, there are some meals that, like when we do our tacos, that's a pretty easy meal. We have tacos with
Right.
beans. Um,
Well, doctor,
so
there's two plant-based doctors, naturopath. From Michelle told us about Daniel Chong, it's in the chat, and Janet Guerin told us about Dr. Shan Hong Lu. So there's two naturopathic doctors. It doesn't mean they don't use oil or something, though. They might use oil, and I wouldn't like that either, but we don't know. Maybe they don't. Andy,
yeah,
how would you like to summarize? Um, I know people now know how to find you, which so you'll probably get a bunch of emails. That's good.
yeah.
And then I'd like
Well,
people to buy his book Bypass.
yeah. Well, I think that you need to um, you need to see how you're doing, which I do recommend a certain amount of blood tests, but unfortunately, the normals for blood tests are based on the whole society. So consequently, they include both. They don't really give a good representation of whether you truly are normal or not. For a while, Kaiser cholesterol level was normal under 240. Well, according to Esselstyn, to be vascular disease proof, you need your total cholesterol to be somewhere under 180 and your LDL to be somewhere under 80. Your liver test, your ALT, normal is supposedly up to 45, but anything over 25 suggests you may already have some liver dysfunction and you need to really look at your sugar intake. And you also need to do a high sensitivity CRP, which stands for C-reactive protein, to see whether you have a level of inflammation going, and of course, a fasting blood sugar. And if your blood sugar is elevated, you should do a simultaneous fasting insulin level. And if that's elevated, you're on the road to diabetes. You have insulin resistance. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
that's wonderful.
yeah, and so that you have to see where you stand, where you sit, and so
Yeah, a lot
uh,
of people don't check themselves very often and then they get a heart attack or something else before they do anything.
right, right,
So that's why you're right about that. I think people need to get checked regularly so they can find out where they are. And then we can all help you once you
yeah.
get
So
there.
somebody asked about the Clearly Health test, which is a CT angiogram and
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah,
AI report. I,
for sure.
I, well, that all depends on I don't know where you're trying to go with that. If you're not on a whole foods plant-based diet, avoiding SOS and processed foods, what is the CT angiogram going to tell you? Now, if you're on a whole foods plant-based diet and
I
avoiding
believe
added,
Rochelle is, yeah.
yeah, if you're avoiding sugar, oil, or salt, and you're having symptoms, well, then by all means, you need to get that checked out. But um, I think if your labs are normal, the ones that I mentioned, and you're, on the whole food plant-based diet, I'm not sure that you need to have a CT angiogram. I mean, it is radiation exposure, and any radiation exposure is pro-inflammatory. So we as physicians are responsible for creating inflammation anytime we order a ionizing radiation type test. So I
Mhm.
would avoid it unless you had a good reason for it, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, well, that same person is on Esselton for 2 years, so that's good. Yeah, that's Rochelle. Very good, Rochelle. And thank you so much, Andrew Klonicky. Thank you. So wonderful presentation. One person said that our webinar has changed their life. So isn't that the most wonderful thing you ever heard? I think it was Chris. And thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Well, let me say that, yeah, let me respond to that because I would say
Yeah.
that in the last 5 years of practicing medicine, the most satisfaction that I got, I mean, I talked to everyone about a whole foods plant-based diet. Uh, the most common response that I got was, "Oh, I couldn't possibly give up my meat." To which I would say, "Fine, for you, we have chemotherapy and radiation." But there were
And back
patients,
pass.
yeah, but there were patients who would change, and I would always hear from their primary care physicians. They go, Mrs. Smith came in and she wanted me to thank you because it made a big change in her life. And that was probably more satisfying to me than anything else that I did when someone could actually change what they were doing and get themselves into a healthier situation.
Yeah, isn't that the best, Andrew? Thank you for saving lives and doing what you do. I'm just wonderful. I'm good to be your friend, and I'm looking forward to doing this with you again, so we can save more
Sounds
lives.
good.
Hey, I
Thank
wanted
you.
to add one more thing just about label reading is I think Jeff Novick has one of the best
Ah.
label reading videos
Oh,
around. You can
okay.
find it online and it just helps educate about because there's a lot of hidden stuff in there that people don't know is being hidden. And so he
Oh,
really breaks it all down and makes it easier to when you go to the store to actually know what you're getting and to eat the healthiest way if you do eat processed foods.
I use Jeff Novick's label reading in my coaching. I
Yeah,
use
it's
it
fantastic.
because even though it says 3% fat, it's more like 20, but they hide it. They do it by the
Mhm.
weight instead of anyway, they hide everything. So you can't even believe what you're seeing on there because
That's
they
right.
do have a
Actually,
way to
yeah,
manipulate the numbers.
yeah.
It's terrible.
2% milk is actually about 38% fat.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
like that. So thank you so much again, Andy. And now we have, can you take away your share screen, Andy?
If I must.
Thank you, Dr. Klinke. That was awesome. That was great.
It was. Okay, how do I get James Benny up here as the, let's see. Okay, everybody's really enjoying this so far, but wait till you hear from Dr. James Benny, my friend. Okay, so he has a long list also, but I'm going to try to net it out for you.
No, I gave you, didn't I? I sent you a very condensed version.
I don't know. I got the long one here. So I'm going to go ahead and do as best I can. So he's double board certified in family medicine and lifestyle medicine. He left family medicine in 2022 at the end of COVID because he felt that the medical care system, and this is one of my bugaboos, became overreaching, corrupt, fraudulent, and vindictive if you didn't follow the narrative that was pervasive in the medical, political, pharmaceutical, and insurance business sectors at the time. Think about big pharma and the big insurance companies causing doctors to keep all those meds and surgeries doled out all the time. That's what one of my big things too. He now works evaluating patients for sleep abnormalities, and the most common being obstructive sleep apnea. We know about that in my household, and has been doing so for over 2 years. Learning this new science in the medical field has allowed him to really understand how the body works when it doesn't get adequate oxygen when sleeping, thus disrupting restorative sleep and reducing humanity's quality of life. It's a life-changing education and journey for him and his patients that he educates. He said, personally, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing a patient go from chronic fatigue, sleep hypoxemia, hypoxemia, and excess daytime sleepiness and fatigue to energetic, thriving individuals. He's very fortunate. He also did postdoctoral training in nutrition with the late, great John McDougall doctor, because without that training, it would have been very hard to be educated in the truth about how food directly impacts a person's health and well-being. He worked with Dr. McDougall part-time for over 10 years, managing and educating patients at his health and wellness center. I forgot you did it that long. I thought it was just a short time. Anyway, so he worked also in Santa Rosa at the health. Oh, I did that, which allowed him to directly participate in changing lives with the whole food, low fat diet, plant diet. And then he also was one of the first medical moderators of nutritionfacts.org at the pioneering website of scientific review on a variety of helping answer numerous medical topics. And he volunteered many hours with Dr. Michael Greger. He feels very blessed to have a wonderful and supportive, beautiful wife, Angie, 2 amazing sons, grandsons, Kodak, and mountain bike trail dog. Is that his name?
No, it's Kodak. So we rescued him, and he's a Borador. So he's a half border collie, half lab. So he's got webbed feet, but this guy is wound. And so we took him out when we got him and took him for a walk, and he's just doing this. Get him home. He's still doing that. I'm like, I'm going to make you a mountain biking dog. And so that's I took him out this morning, 6 to 7 miles, and calms him down. He sits there and relaxes for a while without being high strung. So that's Kodak the trail dog.
That is wonderful. I love it. So of course you rescued, because that's who you are.
I had to rescue him. The real quick story, I had to rescue him because my son was living in this apartment. The lady below had this 3-month-old Borador, and it's in a 700 square foot apartment. She's got 3 young kids, and she thought she could take it to the park every day and it would just get its energy out. And she's like, no, it's not going to work. And I didn't want another dog. We just put our other dog down not too long before that. And then my son calls me and says, Dad, you have to adopt this dog. And I said, why? His name's Benny. I'm like, oh God, Benny. Okay, I have to adopt. So I came home and my son's like, yeah, we can't have Benny. How about Kodak? He's all black with a little white tuft on there, like Kodak, black and white. Kodachrome. Remember those words? Dating myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's how we rescued.
I love that. So, Dr. Benny, tell us what you're going to talk about today.
Well, I work with all different kinds of. Let me do I just press share? Will it bring me into? There
Yes.
we go. I think
If you want to share, yeah, press share and hit the sound link there too.
You are screen sharing. So can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see it on mine. I just see the one in front of me. And then there's a sound one you said before on the right-hand side.
Yeah, when you first hit on share, before your screen comes up, I think.
Share computer sound, say
Yeah,
stereo hi-fi.
sound.
That's in the on the can you hear it now? I don't think there's any sound. So yeah, we'll just dive right in because I want to get through this.
Oh, I would start hit that
PowerPoint.
other button so you see just the first screen.
Is it working?
Yep, we're there.
I see it. All right. So to preface this, yeah, I left family medicine. I still do practice it a little bit. I really practice it with my patients because, you know, family medicine is pervasive with everything, and it definitely is hand in hand with sleep apnea. And like Don had talked to before, and Dr. Klonike, that you know the way I feel is you got to meet with the patients where they are. Some people don't want to hear anything about diet. I'm not going to go there. I don't have a lot of time. But the people that do, I try to take the time and I give them a bunch of handouts. And I think that's very important because, yes, we know, as you'll see, and as you've already heard, you know, our number one killer is heart disease is reversible 99.4% on a whole food plant-based diet. And 700,000 people a year die from heart disease, and they don't have to. And only 500,000 people died from COVID. But that created this crazy hysteria. Why aren't we having hysteria about our number one killer, heart disease, that's totally preventable? So if you can reverse something 99.4%, I think that's a powerful introduction to people, and they usually piques their interest if they're interested. And at least if we can get them eating more fruits and vegetables, we know that that helps them as well. But anyway, so I left that, and I had taken about 7 months off and did a ton of mountain biking. And you know, what am I going to do next? I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do. And I had a friend, this big mountain biker, that owns a durable medical goods company. And every time I'd see him at a mountain biking event, he'd be like, hey, you need to go help Dr. Trevor. So Dr. Trevor is a pulmonologist. He went into sleep medicine about 30 years ago. And he was 78 years old, and they couldn't find anybody to help him. And I said, I'm not going to, no, it's probably a corporation. I can't stand corporations. I don't want to do this. So he just kept badgering me. And finally, after about 3 months, I go and I talk to the office manager. And I said, the most important thing you need to understand about me is I'm a patient care advocate. I'm not a sickness care advocate. I'm not a system care advocate. And without missing a beat, she cuts me off and she goes, that's exactly how we are. I'm like, what? Is this real? So then I met Dr. Trevor, and here he is. This guy's 78 years old, and he's telling me he's just spent the last 2 years working 7 days a week to keep the place running because the insurance companies keep decreasing reimbursements so much that he's having to take money out of his retirement account to keep the place running. So I said, you know, and I said, I'm thinking, like, is he a workaholic? So I said, do you have any hobbies? He's like, yeah, I like to fish. I like to golf. I said, when's the last time you've done that? It's like 8 months ago. I go, do you have any grandkids? He's like, yeah. I go, when's the last time you've seen them? Like 8 months ago. And so my bleeding heart, I'm like, okay, I'll come. I'll feel this out. We'll see how it works. And here it is. It's been over 2 years, and it's been a fantastic journey. Best decision ever made. So it's been really crazy how much I've learned. And one thing I'll preface this with is there's different prevalence rates throughout the world depending on your genetic code. But the latest data that was presented to us from one of the sleep experts here in San Francisco is that 50 to 65% of Americans have untreated sleep apnea. Now, that's insane, but if you start looking in places like Switzerland or a lot of the foreign Eastern countries, it's up to 85%. So it's very important to educate people. And when I think about back to my residency, not one time did we ever discuss sleep apnea. And it worsens every chronic disease, accelerates aging, worsens every psychiatric disorder. So I felt like it was really important to explain this to everybody that's watching today, because I'd be beating an old dog with telling you all about the nutrition stuff. But anyway, so let's get this going here. We're going to talk about sleep apnea. So sleep apnea is the transient cessation or stopping of respiration breathing during sleep. So on the left-hand side of the screen, on my screen, you can see there's a normal airway. You can see those blue lines, they show that it's open. But in sleep apnea, what happens is that when we sleep at night, all our muscles relax. And if you see on the right there, and I wish I could do like, can you see my mouse when I do this? Can you see my mouse on the screen? No, you
No.
can't. Okay. So I wish there was a way I could like highlight it and have you track along. But anyway, the tongue, you can see there is relaxes, the esophagus relaxes, the tongue, when we sleep, moves to the back of our throat, especially if we're on our back. Because when we're on our back, gravity's pulling this way, our jaw is going to relax, pushes that jaw back, the tongue goes back, and now you have snoring. If you don't have a complete blocked airway, or you have apnea, which is completely blocked airway. And that causes a big stress reaction in the body, but that's what sleep apnea is. There are 5 types of sleep apnea that can happen during sleep. There's obstructive sleep apnea, which is really a catchphrase for all the types of sleep disorders. There's obstructive sleep hypopnea. That's the most common. That's where we don't completely stop breathing, but what happens is our airway becomes so small that we can't get enough oxygen in, and then our oxygen drops. Then there's also central sleep apnea. We aren't going to go into that, but central sleep apnea is where the brain stops telling us to take a breath. It's everybody has it, but it's really uncommon to have it as the most common problem in someone with sleep apnea. Mixed sleep apneas, we only get into that in complex sleep apnea. That's where you have centrals after you, we'll get into that. I think I talk about it. We'll just skip that. So central hypopneas, I can't see my whole screen because I've got this bar in front of it from the Zoom. So I'm trying to see most common. This is where our airway is partially blocked. So where if you look back there, you still have this blue line that you can see, you can get air in there, but it's narrowed. And so that's when we get snoring. So you have that sound, and that's where people can still have a sleep apnea, but not actually apnea. So it's kind of confusing, but that's why I said it's a catch-all term. But this is the most common, is where people actually narrow their airway because their tongue relaxes and their esophagus relaxes, and then your oxygen is going to drop. So on the top, normal breathing, middle, what we just saw, the snoring, and bottom is, again, the complete obstruction, which is the true apnea. So the severity of OSA is graded by what we call the apnea-hypopnea index. The AHI is, for short, is how many times we stop breathing or do not breathe deep enough in an hour. So mild sleep apnea, mild obstructive sleep apnea is 5 to 15 times per hour, moderate is 15 to 30, and severe is above 30. Now, we need to put that in terms that is understanding. And so when I talk to my patients, everything is put in a term that anybody can understand. So what we do is we take 5 to 15 times per hour, we divide that in 60 if it's 5, and that means every 12 minutes, your body's waking you up to take a breath. And then, of course, if we take 15 and divide it into 60, that's every 4 minutes, your body is waking you up to take a breath. And to put in perspective, normal is 0 to 1 time per hour. That's what we should be with a protected airway. So you can see how your body, if every 4 minutes it's got to wake you up, that would be pretty stressful. And of course, severe, 30 into 60, is every 2 minutes, your body is waking you up to take a breath. So there's no way you're getting any restful restorative sleep if your body's got to keep waking you up so you don't die. So 30 more times per hour. So there it is. I said, normal AHI, apnea-hypopnea index is 0. Think about that being woken up 0 times per hour, up to 5 times per hour is normal. Truly being woken up more than once per hour is abnormal, and that disrupts our sleep. And when we wake up tired, because we're not getting restful, restorative sleep. And why does it understand sleep apnea? Why is it important? Because untreated sleep apnea worsens, as we already said, every chronic disease, every psychiatric disorder, and it accelerates aging. Here's an example. So let's say you come to my office, we do a pulse ox on you, it's 98%. So I explained to the patients, like, look, 98%, your brain uses that basically as a thermostat. It always wants to be 98%. So let's say you eat lunch, you go up, eat lunch, and then you're chilling on the couch, relaxing after lunch, and you start to shallow breathe. And so what happens is you start to shallow breathe, the oxygen is going to drop. And the standard we look at is a 3% drop. So if we're at 98 and we go to 95, your body makes you do this, makes you yawn. And what it does, it gives you this big bolus of oxygen and it raises your oxygen back up to the 98%. But we can only take deep breaths when we're awake. When we're asleep, we're in a shallow rhythmic breathing pattern, and we cannot take deep breaths. So what happens is our body has to wake us up. And so what it does is, that's the problem, the way it wakes us up. The way that our body wakes us up is it throws our body into a fight or flight response. And fight or flight is when your body gets really scared and is just like a tiger running at you, or like this guy is running from a bull. You got to get the heck out of there really quick, or potentially you could die. And that's what your body's doing. So I'm going to skip these because it's kind of redundant. So what happens is that when you obstruct, every time that your body has to wake you up, there it is, your body dumps a bunch of stress hormones in your body, like cortisol, stress chemicals, adrenaline, inflammatory molecules, all those, I won't even read them, and they dump it into your blood. And what's this do? It raises your blood pressure, it increases your heart rate, it makes you move your legs, it makes you do anything at all to get you to wake up and go, take that breath. And why does it do that? Because death is not an option. So it's going to keep disrupting your sleep every time you obstruct, and it's going to go in this fight or flight response. And if you're doing that all night long, you are not going to get any restful, restorative sleep. You are going to be getting stressful sleep. And that will leave you feel tired through the day, exhausted throughout the day. Sleep is a very active process. And during sleep, we replace and replenish our neurotransmitters, our hormones, which help us think, move, and feel good. We consolidate our thoughts. We make memories. We work through problems. We repair our muscles, our bones, organs, and other tissues. So if we have an unprotected airway when we sleep, our body will keep waking us up to take that breath. Disrupted sleep doesn't allow the body to do all the restoration and repair needed to feel rested and restored the next morning. So then we wake up tired, unrested, fatigued, and can have a whole cacophony of other signs and symptoms related to sleep apnea. So this is important. I'm going to start on the daytime. I'm just going to kind of go around in clockwise fashion. I do want to take time on this because these are a lot of the signs and symptoms that we see with our patients. So a lot of times we'll get early morning headaches. Why do we get headaches? Well, a lot of times we'll clench our jaw and we'll grind our teeth, and that goes up to a muscle we have in our head here on the side called the temporalis muscle, and it gets so overworked that it actually gives us morning headaches that usually get better as the day goes on. Of course, daytime sleepiness, you're not getting a good nighttime, restful, restorative sleep. So during the day, you're tired, you're falling asleep at work, you're falling asleep driving a car, hopefully not, but that does happen. You also have poor concentration. I've also had patients that come in that I'm listening to them talk and they can't follow the thought process. And so I'm thinking maybe they have a little early dementia here. And what's so amazing is that once you get them treated on the PAP therapy and they're doing that every day, they come back like normal, speaking totally normal. So it can actually mimic early dementia. So that's important to know. Irritability, right? You're not getting restful, restorative sleep. We've all been there. We don't feel good. You get a little bit more irritable. Of course, falling asleep, we already talked about that. Frequent visits to the bathroom. So why is that? This is a really interesting one. So every time we stop breathing, the pressure goes up in our chest. I don't know if you can see that, but the pressure goes up in our chest. What's in our chest? It's our heart. And every time the pressure goes up in our heart, the top part of the heart, called the atria, push blood into the ventricles, and the atria are extremely sensitive to that pressure. And so when the pressure goes up, the atria stretches, and to protect itself, it releases a chemical that goes to the kidneys and makes us get up and go pee. Why does it do that? Two reasons. One, you're up and breathing is the most important, right? Because now you've got a protected airway because you're awake. And the second one is it's dropping volume. By you peeing, you're lowering your volume and you lower your blood pressure. There's another one too. So every time, you can't see it, but down here on my stomach, every time we stop breathing, our pressure goes up in our abdomen. That's where our stomach is. If you have food in it, what happens is that will get pushed up into the esophagus because that's the place of least resistance. And if it's painful acid reflux, the body wins again because now you're going to be up, you're going to be breathing, so you got a protected airway, and then you're going to run and get Tums or baking soda or eat something to stop that reflux. There's also restless sleep. People will be like moving all the time. What I find very interesting though is a lot of people, when we go over the sleep study with them, they don't realize they're moving all over the bed. And when we do a sleep study on them, they can see when they have their diagnostic study how many times they're moving back and forth, changing positions, and they're not aware of it. And then you put them on a CPAP and we do a titration sleep study. and then they don't move at all, maybe once or twice. And they're like, I can't believe I move like that. And then you protect my airway, don't move at all. Well, the reason your body's moving is it's trying to wake you up to take a breath because death's not an option. So the other thing is choking or gasping for air. A lot of people will wake up saying, I feel like I was choking, racing heart rate, all these things. And that's very common because, again, your body's in this fight or flight mode. And it's trying to get you to wake up. Another thing, witness pauses in breathing, is that's apnea. So that's usually, you have to have someone in the bedroom with you that hears you stop breathing. And once that happens, they almost always come to the office like, nope, they stopped breathing for 30 seconds. I counted it. I recorded it for them or whatever. And a lot of the patients, we don't know. When we're asleep, we're out of it. We don't know this is going on. So we don't even know if you snore. Most people don't. So we need someone that has watched us, and then we can figure it out a little easier. I've had so many people, they're like, I don't snore, I don't do this. And so then when they come and we go over their sleep study, I'm like, here's the microphone, here's your snoring, here's your leg movement, here's your positional change. And they just look at it just amazed, like, I didn't know I do all that. I said, that's why I love science. Like, we got good hard data, we don't have to speculate, right? So it's important that you guys, if anybody has this, and we'll get through some testing, but that you see all this. And there's even more symptoms. It just goes on and on and on. It worsens every problem that you could possibly imagine. So why does your body disrupt your sleep? And that's what we already talked about, because death is not an option. Your body is about survival at all costs. If you survive miserably, that's a win for your body. You might not even know you're surviving miserably because the body has a crazy adaptation to misery and suffering. It's because you've never had a protected airway. You don't know what it's like to have a protected airway, so there's nothing to compare it to. So you think that's normal, so you go about your day. You think everybody's tired, miserable, and fatigued. So there you go, like we just talked about, the adaptation. Let's see. I don't know how I got doubled. This is, it's kind of a busy slide. I liked it only because it shows you all the percentages of untreated sleep apnea things that happen. Like, look, the stroke is increased risk by 90%. You got mood disturbance and daytime sleepiness and loud snoring. It's all these percentages in there. And if you guys want to, I'm not going to go over this whole slide, but it's a good thing if you go back through the recording just to look at this. It shows you, like, here, let's look at all the high blood pressure, which is hypertension. The coronary artery disease, it increases, cardiac arrhythmias, congestive heart failure, heart disease, sudden death, and the increase in medical costs. And it just every single thing you can imagine. So that's why I really did feel it's important to put that in there, but also to hopefully educate people and hopefully they'll get screened if they feel like they have these issues. So how do we test in sleep apnea? The number one thing that we have is overnight oximetry. This is what it looks like. They put a pulse ox on your wrist and they put a little pulse oxygen sensor on your finger, and then you sleep all night long. And then you bring it back in, we download it, and then we can look at it. And what we look for are oxygen desaturations, so 3 to 4%. And if it's just like the sleep apnea, if they're having 3, 4, 5 desaturations within an hour, most likely they probably have untreated sleep apnea, and that lets us actually do a more formal testing, which you'll see here. So there's two ways to test. There's either the home sleep apnea test or the gold standard, which was the in-lab test. The home sleep apnea test is okay. It only gives us 5 sensors, so we only have 5 things to really look at, but it gives us a pretty good idea of what's going on. It's good to usually do 2 nights with a home sleep apnea test. And that's because just doing one night, you might be like, hey, what is this thing on me? The next night, you feel a little bit better. And then we can compare the two and see, hey, take the one that has the best data. But this is something you would have to go to a sleep physician and order, have them evaluate you, get it ordered, and then get it done. Then we got the gold standard. I looked at so many pictures of polysomnograms online the last week, and I never found anyone that looks like the way our lab is. And this is the closest one. Everybody else had these big mechanisms on their chest and everything, but this is a child, obviously, but we wrap the wires. So there's 27 wires. We got a full EEG. We have an airflow sensor under the nose. This child doesn't yet. We have sensors on your chest and abdomen for rise and fall. So if you stop breathing, we see they don't move. We also have an EKG so we can monitor for any arrhythmias. We also have sensors on your legs because of all the leg movement. So we wire that all up, get them all ready to go, and then we let them sleep all night. And then once they have that done, we usually have them come back and review it. We just got bought out by a big corporation. So I'm kind of sitting here going, that's really not what we did. If somebody had severe sleep apnea, we don't want them to come back and see us. We want to order or get a titration done on them right away and get them on a CPAP as soon as possible, because having them come back each time to review these studies takes time and it just delays treatment. And we don't want to do that. Like people are suffering when they're severe, and you'll see a couple. Oh, so here we go. So I'm going to actually show you what the printout is for one of our patients that we had. Now, this is the most severe I've personally seen. So this person stopped breathing 146.8 times per hour. That means that their body's waking them up every 24 seconds. And then when you look at the next number, the lowest oxygen saturation they had went down to 51%. So let me put this in perspective. So the patient that came in at 98%, the heart pumps the blood out at 98%. When it comes back to the heart, it comes back between 70 and 75%. If it's leaving at 50%, it's coming back at 30 to 35%. And the amazing thing to me is this person has not had a heart attack or stroke. Like I had one lady that went down to 30. And it's just a testament that the body will do everything it can to not die. But I did tell this guy, because he was already on treatment, we were going over his sleep study, and he only used his treatment twice out of 90 days. And it's because he's on a really high pressure. And I said, why are you only using it 2 days out of the 90? You've got to meet compliance, which is 70% of the days out of 30 for greater than 4 hours a day, or the insurance won't pay for it. He goes, well, I felt like it worked, but the pressure is just so high. Well, yeah, he's really high pressure because this guy's morbidly obese. But I also told him, I said, look, dude, when you were in that room sleeping, you turned blue, and his eyes get really big. And I said, you're 33 years old. You have 4 kids. You need to use this therapy, because when I showed him the therapy, the BiPAP therapy that we used with him, his apnea-hypopnea index, how many times he stopped breathing, went from 146 to 1.8 per hour. That is a miracle. So he needs to use it. So we're going to go to the next page. This is a hypnogram. I won't go into all the details, but if you look all the way down at the bottom there it says CPAP. See, there's 0 treatment. See, it's 0 pressure. So this is what we call the diagnostic stage. And if you look 2 lines up, you'll see this thing. It says SpO2. That's the oxygen saturation of the blood. And if you see, it goes down to 80, but you can see it's truncated. So it's somewhere in this point, this area, this guy went down to a 51% oxygen. And the thing, if you look right above that with all those hashtags, those are the hypopneas that he's had. If you look all the way above that to the thing on the left that says OA, those are obstructive apneas. So you can clearly see the hypopneas are worse than the obstructions, and that's very common. So what happens is we have a thing called a split night protocol. If they meet criteria for moderate sleep apnea, we'll stop that part of the test, which we did there. We go in, we put a mask on him, and then we did the titration the second half of the night. And this, as you see, once we got a mask on him, he stopped dropping way below 80 there. I think everything is above 80 there, and you can see that as you go along those lines. Now, really quick, I want you to look. Parts of those lines are really flat, and then some are up and down. So if you look all the way at the very top, you're going to see the thing that says stage on your left-hand side. And as you go along here, there's going to be these big, thick, dark lines. Each one of those dark, thick lines are when the patient is in REM, which means they're dreaming. And in sleep, it's very important for us to monitor REM, because in REM, we're paralyzed. We're paralyzed for our protection, so we don't act out our dreams, like sleep eat, sleep fight, sleep walk. But what happens is that because we're paralyzed, when we're in that dreaming state, we're in REM, and we are having an obstruction, your body has to first unparalyze you, then wake you up. That takes longer, and so we see bigger oxygen drops. So if you look at where those thick lines are and you look down on the screen to that oxygen saturation curve, you'll see that every time this person is dreaming, they're having oxygen desaturations. So they have a protected airway in between that when they're not dreaming. So it's just an interesting thing to show is that, yeah, he even though he's way better than he was, he still has issue. And when we put him on a BiPAP, we got him on pressures. You can see the pressure there, 16, all the way to 24/16, which is really high pressure. And he still wasn't protected in his REM. And this is because now you can see this position at the very bottom right above the titration. It says S. That means supine. He's sleeping on his back. So this guy had not been sleeping on his back. I asked him how he was sleeping. He says he sleeps upright in a recliner. And why does he do that? Because he's dropping his oxygen to 51% when he's on his back. And so his body has trained him not to do that because that's not the option. So now he's sleeping and he's on his back, and he slept on his back in the titration, but he was never protected. So what we tell these people is try not to sleep on your back, but you're sleeping. All bets are off when you're sleeping. You'll end up sleeping on your back. But he's way better protected, and it made us feel a lot better than going down to 51%. Let's see, do we go up here? Okay, so I went back to that. His oxygen, how many times he stopped breathing? Can I move that? Probably not in this. It went down to, I think it's 12 times per hour. And if you look down to the oxygen saturation, this is under the therapeutic one, right across from the arrows that you see there. You see his oxygen lowest percentage went down to 79% on CPAP. So much better than 51%. So you can see where that benefit is for him. And hopefully when I see him and he's falling back up, he's doing even better. So the most common form of sleep apnea treatment is continuous positive airway pressure, CPAP. That's where there's a pressure coming in. So the most common is like, hey, say the pressure's 10 coming in, you blow out against 10. So that's the continuous part. Then there's the different types of CPAP masks. There's all different types. People are really, I think that's one of their biggest fears, is having to wear this big, huge, enormous alien on their face. And that's the way it used to be in the old days. But nowadays, you can see we have nasal pillows. It's a very low profile. Let's see where. So this is, I don't think I'd want to wear that. But then there's the nasal pillows, and you can see it's very low profile, and it fits the face pretty darn good. And people, once they get used to the actual mask being on their face, really actually enjoy the treatment, because now they're protected airway, and all their symptoms that they'd had before go away, and their quality of life goes up. So there's hundreds of different masks. So if you ever do get into this realm, don't be afraid to try any different mask. That you'll find one that eventually will work for you. So the other thing is, and we didn't go into BiPAP therapy, and there's a whole different, but we'll just leave it as CPAP. So you guys who have sleep apnea may have BiPAP, may have what we call adaptive servo ventilator or BiPAP ST. We're not going to get into those just for the sake of time. It's kind of too much information. So that means, so sleep apnea is genetic. So I can't tell you how many times the parent comes in, they bring their child in because their child is having, stressful sleep, they're snoring, their teeth grinding or whatever. And I explain all the things I already explained to you, everybody listening, about all those symptoms. And I can't tell you how many times the parents like looking at me, and they look at their kid, and they look back at me, and they're like, I need to get tested. I have all the same symptoms. That's because it's genetic. The structure of the mouth, the palate, the tongue, the esophagus, that all came from mom or dad. That means they got it from their mom or dad. And if there's any kids, they grow up, they can pass it on to their children as well. So make sure you tell your parents that they're at risk. So I get a lot of people coming in, they get sleep apnea, they're tested for it, they're positive for sleep apnea, they get on treatment, they're feeling better. And I make sure that they know, hey, this is genetic. Tell your parents, have them get checked, because they don't know that there's a different way to experience life, which is like with a protected airway. And hopefully you'll stop snoring, and your partner will like you a little bit more, and they'll sleep in the same room with you, and you'll have a better quality of life. So this is one of the things we look at. It reminds me of an old Netter painting, but it's somebody else like C. Lin. So this is what we call the Mallampati score. It's just a grading of what we call the airway. So if you look on the left-hand side where it says class 1, if someone opens their mouth and I can see that, you can see the palatine arches in the back and the uvula hanging down and their tongue's not in the way, that's a very large airway. I very rarely see that. I usually see class 4. This is what we call Mallampati class 4. You see this tongue is very enlarged, and you can't really, we're not showing you the upper palate, but that tongue is blocked the posterior airway. So the other thing on this tongue that they're showing you is you see grooves on the side of that tongue. And you see it a little bit in the class 3, you do not see it on 1 or 2. And what that is, the tongue is too large for the actual lower jaw. So what happens during the day is we can push our tongue into our lower jaw, but the teeth push back. And when they push back, they mold into the side of the tongue. That's called scalloping. And so that's what you can see in this class 4 is they're scalloping. That's important for us because now we know when we sleep, all our muscles relax, our tongue's going to relax, it's going to flare out, sit right in the middle of the airway. It can't go down, it's too big for that. It can't go up. And if again, they're on their back, gravity's going to pull this way. There goes the jaw, there goes the tongue. So they're the most common that we see is a tongue scalloping. Then I didn't talk about some other things that we'll go through here. To me, it just gets to be more and more of a physical, be more for a doctor lecture or a provider lecture. But structures that can inhibit airflow, the tongue, the small upper palate, small lower jaw, tonsils, especially if they're enlarged in children, we see that. Sometimes we have kids that come in, they have severe sleep apnea. We get their tonsils removed and their sleep apnea goes away. Most of the time, though, they grow up and the sleep apnea comes back because it was a genetic thing to begin with. So the tonsils, it protects the kid when they're young, which is a good thing. But as we get older and our muscles get weaker, it usually starts rearing its ugly head again. The esophagus collapsing while we sleep. Some people might know about this new therapy called Inspire. Inspire is an implantable device, but the way they advertise it on TV is like, oh, I hate wearing my CPAP mask. I use Inspire. Well, so people want to know what it is. And I said, once I say it's an implantable device, they're usually like, no, I don't want it. But what they do is they implant a device. It runs wires up and through your neck to the back of your tongue to the hypoglossal nerve. And that's the nerve that allows you to move your tongue forward. So when we turn it on, it makes your tongue do this. Bah. And when we're actually testing them, that's what we do. It pushes the tongue out of the way. But the caveat to the Inspire, it has to only be your tongue that's in the way. If your esophagus collapses, it is a no-go. And there's a couple other things. So they make it sound great, but and maybe it is for some people. We've only had a couple people come through. It's a pretty new device, but that's the option when people are like, I don't want to wear a mask. I want this. And what I always tell people, CPAP's a non-invasive therapy. I have been in medicine for 33 years, and I've seen, and first 10 years is in cardiology. I've seen crazy stuff go down in the cath lab where people die and you don't expect it, for stroke, or I can list a bunch of things. And so seeing that all the time, you're like, it's not without risk to go under surgery. But CPAP, the only risk is that you might be a little claustrophobic, but over time you get used to it. And then if your quality of life goes up, it's the best way to go, at least initially. And then we didn't talk about nasal turbinates, but I'll mention this on purpose because it's another important a symptom that happens is our nasal turbinates warm and moisten the air. And when I look up the nose, we can see those. And so they're very vascular. But what happens is that the nasal turbinates, we can actually do an extremely tiny amount of gas exchange like we do in our lungs in our nasal turbinates. So our body, when we're having these apnea spells or hypopneas at night, wants to get more oxygen. So what it does is it engorges and enlarges those nasal turbinates and can make them to where they're completely obstructed. If they're completely obstructed, what happens is now you can't breathe through your nose, you're going to open your mouth, and here comes the snoring. So one of the coolest things is once we get those people treated with a CPAP or whatever therapy, what happens if they always use their therapy when they sleep? What happens over time is the nasal turbinate swelling will go down and they'll be able to breathe through their nose again. And the other thing that's interesting is that a lot of these people that have this swollen nasal turbinates also have severe allergies. And so they take allergy shots or they're taking 4 or 5 medications. And then you get them on the CPAP and they're using it all the time and they basically stop all their medications because it's not swollen, inflamed, and irritated. So their nose can handle normal dust particles and allergens that are in the air without reacting to it. So those are the things we look for. So remember to have your medical provider order an overnight oximetry. That's the fastest way to get screened. You're trying to get into a sleep lab. We were backed up by 6 months at one point. So that can be a long time. And I don't want people to wait just to get the actual office visit. I want them to be screened and know if they have a problem and that maybe we can get them in and get them a sleep study faster. And you cannot get better if you do not get tested for OSA. So it's always I don't even think it costs anybody to get an overnight oximetry anymore. And like I said, it's a great screening tool. I'm going to digress just a bit for we had a cardiologist. And when I first started working in the sleep lab, the most referrals I ever saw was coming from this cardiologist. And it always had an overnight oximetry. And so I was like, what has he figured out? This is the only cardiologist that knows that sleep apnea can cause atrial fibrillation. And so this doctor was just so savvy. And what happens, remember we were talking about the atria getting stretched? Well, every night when you stop breathing, that atria keeps getting stretched. And the more it keeps getting stretched and stretched out, it'll become so big that the electricity doesn't move in the normal top to down fashion. It starts going around in a circle, which causes the atria to quiver like this. And that's called atrial fibrillation. So, and that's a problem, right? You have AFib, now they want to put you on blood thinners, or you might have to get a medical procedure called a maze procedure, where they go in and they actually radio burn scars into your atria so the electricity goes top to down and not around in a circle. So, yeah, I thought that was really cool, because a lot of our other cardiologists poo-poo it, like sleep apnea doesn't cause atrial fibrillation. Like, yeah, it does. Read the literature; it's out there. But yeah, so it's kind of a cool thing. So just remember, it causes all kinds of palpitations, can cause heart failure. I've seen all these cases, and those are people that have had it for 50, 60 years and didn't know they had it. And so their body's been going through this horrible fight or flight response every single night with all the inflammation just beating them up. So spoiler alert, 33 years in medicine, I've learned we're all terminal. I think we heard somebody say that earlier. So to me, it's not about quantity, it's about quality of life. And that's what this is about. We're not going to live forever, but how do you want to live while you're on the planet? Do you want to live with a lot of energy so you can go on vacation and enjoy your vacation? Or do you want to be behind the 8 ball, and when you go on vacation, you're wondering about when you can take your next nap, which is, I've heard this case happen, I don't know how many times with the patients, that once they get treated, their quality goes way up. So it's not about living longer, it's about living better. I think this long time ago, I did this presentation with that picture, and those are the 2 oldest twins. I think they were 115 years old back then. This is probably about 4 or 5 years ago, at least. But yeah, that's what it's about. You want to live better. I don't want to live in a wheelchair if I don't have to. Yeah, so go get tested. So I'll add one more important point. I'm board certified in lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine is thought that the #1 thing to bring about a healthy life is eating a whole food, minimally processed, plant-based diet with no added oil. And it makes sense, since it can reverse our #1 killer, heart disease, like we talked about. Here's a before and after angiogram from Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And you can see before and after, we're talking about it a year and a half, 2 years later, 2.5 years later, the body had completely cleaned up its arteries. And I want people to look at that main artery, but if they gestalt the picture and look on the sides, look on the left, and then look on the right and look at all the other arteries are there. They didn't grow, they were clogged. And the body went back in and actually unclogged them. That's powerful. That's more powerful than any medicine on the planet. And that's what made me change too when I saw that. So that reverses heart disease 99.4%. And that's powerful. I mean, come on, 99.4%. Yeah, I'll tell you another. I asked a cardiology friend of mine many years ago, Gary Snyder, as he's sitting there eating a hamburger and French fries, reading an echocardiogram, and I said, Gary, have you seen that book by Dean Ornish? This is 1990. It shows that you can prevent heart disease and he's like, yeah, but none of the patients are ever going to follow it. And I said, like, why? Like, oh, let's see. Oh, you're going to keep eating like that? Would you like a saw to your chest or broccoli? Somebody's going to choose the broccoli, Gary. You just got to tell them about it. And but it's funny. He's a good guy. So this is Dean Ornish. The other guy, this is his newer book, Undo It. These are all just, these people are trailblazers. They really did it 40 years ago. And it's still, like you say, Linda, the establishment is so controlled by the pharmaceutical, insurance, medical groups, and big ag that you can't. This stuff gets washed away, and people don't see it because. Okay, so let me talk to this, and anybody that's my age is going to know. When I grew up watching TV, which I didn't get a lot of it, but when I did, I remember Ho 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 Green Giant, which is for vegetables, Chungking Chinese food, Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat. So these are all like plant foods they're advertising on TV. And now you don't see any of that. It's all fast food, and pharmaceutical drugs to counteract the the damage of the fast food and big trucks and movies. That's all you see anymore. And it's just sad because the people, if they don't know where to go look, they don't know, and they'll just
Exactly.
continue to be.
Oh,
Well, I dedicate.
this is so terrific, James. I have a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
It's actually time for you to end.
Oh,
But
yeah, no, you're good.
I'm trying to get a couple questions real quick anyway, okay?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Does Fitbit watches that measure sleep and oxygen variation, high or low levels, give a good indication of possible sleep apnea issues?
Yes, Fitbit can. The best one out there is actually Apple Watch. I've had patients come in. My Apple Watch said I'm going into an arrhythmia. They're going in AFib. They're dropping their oxygen saturation. And I went to a sleep conference, and they had this expert that reviewed every single, personal device that can monitor all that. And by far, it was the Apple Watch that did the best. But if the watch is telling you something's wrong, go to your provider, get an overnight oximetry, and then you can go from there.
And I didn't know the AFib had anything to do with sleep apnea.
Now you do? Isn't that crazy?
Now I do. I did not know. I have so many people I know with that right now. And just all of a sudden, everybody's telling me they have it. AFib.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of people in this. From that, I told you the prevalence from the newest data that's come out is 50 to 65% untreated sleep apnea. So real quick, let me talk about this. I have 2 lifestyle physicians board certified lifestyle physicians that came to me because they're doing everything right, eating a plant-based diet, social connectedness, etc. And they felt horrible. That's because they had untreated sleep apnea. Once we got them on CPAP, they're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. So yeah. Now I would say definitely sleep is number one. It's the most important. If you have poor sleep, you're going to have a poor life, and might not even know it. So yeah, definitely get it checked.
Okay, how does a SAD diet affect sleep quality?
Well, a standard American diet, it depends on what standard is. Is standard 2 for 5 at Carl's Jr. or 2 for 6 at McDonald's? If that's a standard American diet, you're dealing with things that are saturated fat. It sludges your blood. It's horrible, and it's going to make you gain weight. There's no way. Those are so calorie dense. One of the things I tell my patients, like, let's talk about a medium-sized potato about that size, okay? I like Yukon Gold because they're creamy. That's 100 calories and 0 fat. 0 fat.
1%.
Now, okay, depending on the potato, right? So people, I said, how much is a tablespoon of oil in calories? It's 120 calories. Look at any bottle of oil you have in the house, look at it, 120 calories per tablespoon. If you put a tablespoon of oil on that potato, it's now over 50% fat by calories. And how many people have you ever seen just put 1 pat of butter on their potato? 2 or 3, some sour cream, some bacon bits on top of it, and then they blame the potato for making them fat when they have all these calories from fat.
Exactly. Okay, let's see. What about vaccines?
Well, that's a hot topic. I definitely say, and I'm going to put myself out there, do not get any more COVID vaccines. They are detrimental the more you get them. That's been well established.
Dr. John McDougall said the same thing.
Oh yeah. No, if you really want the best resource for this, rather than let me speak, I could go on for hours on that. Go to X, which is formerly Twitter. Thank you, Elon Musk, for allowing us to have free speech, and follow Peter, Petera, McCullough, McCullough, MD, I think MBA, but he is one of the most respected cardiologists. He actually was pro-vaccine. Then he started seeing all this myocarditis. He started having his patients die. He said, stop this. And he has actually testified now, and this has been going on. And they find that now the more boosters you get, the more risk you have of dying from COVID. That's been well established.
Wow. I've heard this before. Dr. McDougall said the same. Thank you for that.
And so that's for COVID. Now we're talking about kids' vaccines. When I was a kid, I think I had 3 or 5 vaccines. Now it's like 42 to 50.
Oh.
And so if you look at population studies, there's 5 population studies out there. One of them is in the Amish that don't get vaccines. Population studies in groups of people that don't get vaccines, 0 autism. If you look at the
Oh,
more vaccines that you get, the higher rate of autism. This has been well established in the
oh,
literature. And so I had my first grandchild. He's now almost a 2.
yeah.
And one thing I told my son is I sent him all that information. You read it yourself, but look at this. He's like, we're not doing any vaccines.
Oh,
Moderna right now is involved in a very large fraud trial for their MMR
oh,
vaccine, and it's going to be multi-billions of dollars. But yeah, they fudge factored everything. When they knew there was things that the symptoms they were having, they were completely fudge factoring it, which means cooking the data, cooking the books.
oh,
So
yeah,
I would just withhold every vaccine at this point. We know in the past, before there were
yeah,
vaccines, people lived a full, happy life. So
right.
and remember, there's a pharmaceutical complex that's driving this because the more vaccines they get, the more money they get. So they want you to take every vaccine as possible anywhere on the planet. Like, let me
Yo,
just say this. Hepatitis B is a blood-borne pathogen, most commonly happens in the US through a needle stick as an adult. Why do we inject our babies day 1 of birth with a hepatitis B vaccine when our immune system is not fully developed until 6 months to make the long-term antibodies against hepatitis B? There's a lot of
oh,
crazy stuff out there. So
wow.
you gotta come to your own conclusion. Go
Yeah,
read stuff from Peter McCullough and read the data,
I'm
and
reading it.
you'll go down a rabbit hole
Oh,
there.
that is
But it's
so
important to be educated.
invaluable.
It's
Yeah, I
so
like to know everything.
education.
Thank
Yeah,
We should all want to know everything. Thank you so much. This has been so
like that.
invaluable. I think you saved a bunch of lives today. Anyway, so thank you, Dr. Benny. We have to go now
Absolutely.
just because I have my next one. But anyway,
Yep,
you
very
are the
good.
best. You are the best. And you live
Oh,
too
you're
far
sweet.
away from me, right? Where do you live again?
What?
You live
I live in
DC?
Reading. I'm only 2 hours from you.
How many
I'm only
hours?
2 hours. 2.
Oh, not too bad. Okay. All right.
No,
Well, is that on the way to San Francisco or not?
no, we're north, so you'll be going
Well,
to
that's
Oregon,
north. Okay, never
Highway
mind.
5.
I'm an idiot when it comes to directions. So anyway, I just want to thank you for your time today. That was so wonderful. I learned so much.
Oh,
And
you bet. Now, did I just
I mean,
unshare
I
my
had
screen?
no idea of just about everything you said. So I learned so much new information. Thank you. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome. Now, how do I unshare my screen?
Oh, there you
Oh, there
go.
it went. Okay.
So
I had to
can
click
you
it
tell us
twice.
how people can contact you?
You can write me james.benny, Bennie, as you see the name up there, at yahoo.com. I'm not always the best at checking my email. Like,
Yeah, no, he's not. I can guarantee you.
no, and I want to show you, I'm almost embarrassed to show you this, but if you look at my phone, can you see? Let's see if I can focus that. Will it focus? Okay.
No,
Well, anyway,
back
almost. Anyway, I have 8,400 emails.
No wonder it's hard to
I
get a
just
hold
write
of
it
you.
out, start over.
Wait, it was
It becomes
James
so
Benny at
overwhelming. Yeah,
which email was James
James.Benny
Benny at
at yahoo.com.
Yahoo?
Yahoo.
Okay, Yahoo. I'm
Yeah.
putting it in the chat. Thank you so much again. Have a wonderful day. You
You
made my
too.
day full, and I really appreciate you forever. I've just
Ah,
enjoyed your company for a long time, and
yes, it's been
I
great.
hope to see you again.
You will. Hey, who's speaking next? Is Gregor speaking? Dr.
Dr.
Gregor?
Greger speaking, but I'm going to show a short film from him first, and then he's coming
Okay.
online.
Okay, cool.
It's if you can stay, that's great. Um, okay, let me do that.
Thanks for
So,
having us. I really enjoyed this. It's good.
oh, thank you. You were so wonderful. I have never
Uh,
learned so much. Oh, goodness. I'm going to share screen right now with one of the videos he wanted me to show you. It's based on the How Not to Age book that he did. So hang tight with me while I do this. See, having trouble getting to it.
Drinking warm water before bed.
Huh? Can you see that?
Yep.
On a personal note, this is a picture of me taken around the time that my grandmother was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease and sent home to die. She already had so many bypass surgeries, basically run out of plumbing, confined to a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. But then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. My grandma was one of the death's door people. Frances Gregor, my grandmother, arrived in a wheelchair. Mrs. Gregor had heart disease, angina, claudication. Her condition so bad, she could no longer walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she was not only out of her wheelchair, she was walking 10 miles a day. Here's a picture of my grandma at her grandson's wedding, 15 years after doctors had abandoned her to die. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65, but thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96. To enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. So years later, when Dr. Dean Ornish published his landmark lifestyle heart trial proving
Uh-oh, Peter, I lost it. Do you see it?
Linda,
I don't know where.
I don't see it, but
Okay, I'm gonna have to start it over, honey. Sorry.
yes, that's fine. And you can advance a little bit if you like.
Yeah. Let's see. First, I have to share screen again.
Yes, share screen with audio.
Sorry about that, guys. Accidentally pressed the wrong button.
Didgeridoo. That is funny.
That's
to a healthy
perfect.
diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96. To enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. So years later, when Dr. Dean Ornish published his landmark lifestyle heart trial proving with something called quantitative angiography that indeed heart disease could be reversed, arteries opened up without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program, I assumed this was going to be the game changer. I mean, my family had seen it with their own eyes, but here it was, in black and white, published in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, yet nothing happened. So, well, wait a second. If effectively the cure to our #1 killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients, but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. For those of you who aren't familiar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world. So busy folks like you don't have to. I then compile the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings to new videos and articles I upload every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads and no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother. New videos and articles every day on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept. So where did Pritikin get his evidence from? Well, a network of missionary hospitals set up throughout sub-Saharan Africa uncovered what may be one of the most important medical advances According to one of our most preeminent medical figures of the last century, Dr. Dennis Burkitt, the fact that many of our major and commonest diseases were universally rare, like heart disease. In the African population of Uganda, for example, coronary artery disease was almost non-existent. Wait a second, our number one killer, almost non-existent. What were they eating? Well, they're eating lots of vegetables and grains and greens, and their protein almost entirely from plant sources, and they had the cholesterol levels to prove it, very similar to what one sees in kind of modern day plant eaters. And you say, wait a second, maybe they were just all dying early, never lived long enough to get heart disease. No, here's age-matched heart attack rates in Uganda versus St. Louis. Out of 632 autopsies in Uganda, only one myocardial infarction. Out of 632 age and gender matched autopsies in Missouri, 136 myocardial infarctions, more than 100 times the rate of our leading killer. In fact, they were so blown away, went back, did another 800 autopsies in Uganda, still just had one small healed infarct, meaning it wasn't even the cause of death. Out of 1,427 patients, less than 1 in 1,000, whereas here, our disease is an epidemic. Atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, is a disease that begins in childhood, by age 10. Nearly all kids raised on the standard American diet already have what are called fatty streaks building up inside of their arteries, the first stage of the disease. These streaks then turn into plaques in our 20s, get worse in our 30s, and then can start killing us off. In our heart, it's called heart attack. In our brain, the same disease can cause a stroke. So if there's anyone here today older than age 10, then the question isn't whether or not to eat healthy to prevent heart disease, it's whether you want to reverse the heart disease you likely already have, whether you know it or not. But is that even possible? When researchers took people with heart disease, put them on the kind of plant-based diet followed by populations that did not get epidemic heart disease, their hope was, hey, maybe we could slow the disease down a little bit, maybe even stop it. But instead, something miraculous happened. As soon as people stopped eating artery clogging diets, their bodies were able to start dissolving some of that plaque away, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along, but were just never given the chance. That remarkable improvement in blood flow to the heart muscle itself was after just 3 weeks of plant-based nutrition. The human body is a self-healing machine, unless you're sticking it with a fork 3 times a day. Now, sure, you can choose moderation and hit yourself with a smaller hammer, but why beat yourself up at all? This is nothing new. American Heart Journal, 1977, cases like Mr. F.W. here, heart disease so bad couldn't even make it to the mailbox. Started eating healthier. A few months later, he was climbing mountains, no pain. All right? Now, there are these fancy new classes of anti-angina drugs on the market now, cost thousands of dollars a year, but at the highest dose may be able to extend exercise duration as long as 33.5 seconds. It does not look like those choosing the drug route are going to be climbing mountains anytime soon. See, plant-based diets aren't just safer and cheaper, they can work better because you're treating the underlying cause of the disease. Now, normally I'd go on to cancer, talk about the other 15 leading causes of death, talk about the role diet may play in preventing, arresting, or reversing each of our top 15 killers, but what more do you need to know? There's only one diet ever been proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients, a plant-based diet. So, anytime someone tries to sell you on some new diet, do me a favor, ask them one simple question. What are you saying? Has this diet been proven to reverse heart disease? Number one reason me and all my loved ones will die? I mean, the answer is no. Why would you even consider it? If that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one killer of men and women, shouldn't that kind of be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that it can also be useful in preventing, arresting, reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and hypertension, would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. Most deaths in the United States are preventable and related to nutrition. According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the largest study of human disease risk factors in history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the number one cause of death in these United States, it's our diet. The number one cause of disability in the United States, it's our diet. Now bumping tobacco smoking to number 2, cigarettes now only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills hundreds of thousands more. So if most deaths are preventable and related to nutrition, then obviously nutrition is the number one thing taught in medical school, right? I mean, obviously it's the number one thing your doctor talks to you about at every single visit, right? So how could there be this disconnect between the science and the practice of medicine? Let's do a thought experiment. Imagine yourself a smoker back in the 1950s. Back in the 1950s, the average per capita cigarette consumption was 4,000 cigarettes a year, meaning the average person walking around smoked half pack a day, on average. The media was telling people to smoke. Famous athletes agreed. Even Santa Claus wanted you to smoke. I mean, look, you want to keep fit and stay slender, so make sure to smoke and eat lots of hot dogs to stay trim and lots of sugar to stay slim and trim. A lot better than that apple there. I mean, sheesh, right? Though apples do connote goodness and freshness, reads one internal tobacco industry memo, which brings up many possibilities for a youth-oriented cigarette. They wanted to make apple-flavored cigarettes for kids. Shameless. For digestion's sake, you smoke. No curative powers claimed by Philip Morris, but hey, better be safe than sorry, and smoke. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. No woman ever says no, they're so round, so firm, so fully packed. After all, John Wayne smoked them until he got lung cancer and died. You know, back then, even the paleo folks were smoking. And so were the doctors. Now, this is not to say there wasn't controversy within the medical profession. Sure, you know, some doctors smoke Camels, but others preferred Lucky. So there was a little disagreement there. The leader of the U.S. Senate agreed. Who would want to give their throat a vacation? Not a single case of throat irritation. How could there be when cigarettes are just as pure as the water you drink? Maybe up in Flint, Michigan. But don't worry, if you do get irritated, your doctor can just write you a prescription for cigarettes. This is in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So when the AMA is saying smoking on balance is good for you, and the American Medical Association is saying that, where could you turn back then if you just wanted the facts? What's the new data advanced by science? Well, she was too tired for fun, and then she smoked a Camel. Babe Ruth spoke of proof positive medical science, that is, when he still could speak, before he died of throat cancer. You know, by some miracle back then, there was a smokingfacts.org website that could deliver the science directly, bypassing commercially corruptible institutional filters. You would have become aware of studies like this. This is an Adventist study out of California, published in 1958, showing that non-smokers had at least 90% less lung cancer than smokers, right? But this wasn't the first. When famed surgeon Michael DeBaker was asked why his studies back in the 30s linking lung cancer and smoking were simply ignored, he had to remind people what it was like back then. We were a smoking society. It was everywhere. It was in the movies, airplanes, medical meetings where one heavy haze of smoke. Smoking was, in a word, normal. Okay. So back to our thought experiment. If you're a smoker in the 50s in the know, what do? With access to the science, you realize the best available balance of evidence suggests your smoking habit, not so good for you. So do you change? Or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you between puffs to quit, you could have cancer by then. If you wait until the powers that be officially recognize it, like the Surgeon General did in the subsequent decade, you could be dead by then. It took more than 7,000 studies and the deaths of countless smokers before the first Surgeon General's report against smoking came out. You'd think maybe after the first 6,000 studies could give people a little heads up or something? Powerful industry. Maybe we should have stopped smoking after the 700th study like this. As a smoker in the 50s, on one hand, you had all of society, the government, the medical profession itself telling you to smoke. And on the other hand, all you had was the science. If you're even aware of studies like this. All right, well, let's fast forward 55 years. There's a new Adventist study out of California warning Americans about something else they may be putting in their mouths. Of course, it's not just one study, put all the studies together. Mortality from all causes put together, many of our dreaded diseases significantly lower among those eating more plant-based diets. So, instead of someone going along with America's smoking habits in the 50s, imagine you or someone you know going along with America's eating habits today. What do? With access to the science, you realize the best available balance of evidence suggests your eating habits are not so good for you. So do you change? Or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you between bites to change, it can be too late. In fact, even after the Surgeon General's report came out, the American Medical Association went on record refusing to endorse it. Why? Could it have been because they were just handed a $10 million check from the tobacco industry? Maybe. So we know why the tobacco industry was sucking up, why the AMA was sucking up to the tobacco industry. Well, why weren't more individual doctors speaking up? There were a few gallant souls ahead of their time, speaking up against industries killing millions, but why not more? Maybe it's because the majority of physicians themselves smoke cigarettes. Just like the majority of physicians today continue to eat foods that are contributing to our epidemics of dietary disease. What was the AMA's rallying cry back then? Everything in moderation. Extensive scientific studies have proven smoking in moderation, oh, that's fine. Sound familiar? The food industry used the same tobacco industry tactics, twisting the science, misinformation. The same scientists for hire paid to downplay the risks of cigarettes and toxic chemicals are the same paid for by the National Confectioners Association to downplay the risks of candy, and the same paid for by the meat industry to downplay the risks of meat. Whereas animal foods and processed foods may be killing off at least 14 million people every year. So those of us involved in this kind of evidence-based nutrition revolution, we're talking 14 million lives in the balance. Maybe, plant-based nutrition should be considered kind of the nutritional equivalent of quitting smoking. But how long do we have to wait before the CDC says, don't wait for open heart surgery to start eating healthier as well? Until the system changes, we need to take personal responsibility for our own health, for our family's health. We can't wait until society catches up to the science again, because it's a matter of life and death. A few years ago, Dr. Kim Williams became president of the American College of Cardiology. He was asked in an interview why he himself follows the same diet he recommends to all his patients, a strictly plant-based diet. I don't mind dying, Dr. Williams replied. I just don't want it to be my own fault. Thank you.
Okay. Are we back here? Hi, guys. Wasn't that great? Did you enjoy that too? I did, I know. Let's see, we have.
Okay, you know what?
the back-
Go ahead and come back in, and I'll let Dr. Greger in when he comes.
Okay, in the meantime, can you tell everybody what the vegan community is about while I go back and come in?
Sure.
Thank
Sure,
you.
I can talk a little bit about the vegan community. Thank you for that,
Yes.
Linda. And Linda, this
Yes.
has been awesome, and everybody's done such an amazing job presenting and so much amazing information. And it's mind-boggling how it's not something that most people understand. And for me personally, it's been mind-boggling that people don't want to hear about it. And so I'm Peter Goldstein. I founded We Did It Health with exactly that mission. How do we get better at communicating with our friends and loved ones this message about evidence-based health? And started with that. We did that health, and as we were doing the work to empower grassroots ambassadors to be more effective, we uncovered that really this work goes beyond health, and we've gotten passionate about also the environment and animal justice, and now some of it is about spirituality also. So as we discovered that we're about everything that's vegan, we want to bring together the entire vegan world with the vegan community. And so now we are rebranding We Did That Health to the vegan community, where we want to bring together everybody in the vegan world so that we can all support each other and empower each other and elevate our voice to see a healthy, happy vegan world. So that's our mission, uniting the vegan world, all aspects of it. As we were doing the speakers today, we do have a community where we can have these conversations. So if please go to wedidit.health and join our community. There's no cost to it. Join the community. Join the Healthy Vegan Passion Pod, where we'll have Linda answering questions and where we'll invite other doctors to answer the questions. So for everybody who was participating in the seminar, that will be a great place to continue the conversation. We did it health, and once you join the community, look for the Healthy Vegan Passion Pod. We call our groups Passion Pods because that's where we bring everybody together who's passionate about the same topic. So the Healthy Vegan Passion Pod and Linda will help monitor the questions and the conversations, and we'll be inviting the panelists to also chime in and participate in these questions whenever possible. So we did that health community, the vegan group, the Healthy Vegan group, Healthy Vegan Passion Pod. And with that, Linda, I still see you on camera. So how are you
I'm
doing?
here now. I got it.
You see us?
Yes. Now here's the
Okay.
problem. I haven't found Greger yet. So
Okay,
I'm
so
waiting
Dr.
for him
Greger
right now.
hasn't come yet, but we'll watch for him and we'll let him in once he comes. I know how busy he is, how amazing he is. I've seen him speak several times, and he was amazing. I saw him speak at a Veg Fest in Denver about 3-4 years ago, and I'm so glad the fire marshal didn't come by, because this was in a room that literally had people 3-4 deep all around the seats, and there was just no way to walk out of that room in case of an emergency. So everybody loves him. He's so amazing, and I love the parallel that he draws between smoking and eating, and the pressures of our culture, of our society to keep the industries, the food industry, the tobacco industry going, and those tactics. And I look forward to where, so many people have quit smoking. And I remember when, there was cigarette smoke in airplanes and all that. So I look forward to where we advance in healthy eating as tobacco has advanced, as people stop smoking. people will take care of themselves with food.
Peter, I'm so thankful
yes.
for everything you've done. I mean, he's the reason I'm doing anything anymore. He's the one that promotes everything I do, and I love him for it. And Shakir, and Nikita, who helped me put all this together. It is so rewarding to me to have this because I love getting the message out, as everybody knows. Most people know who know me. And I wanted to say, Dr. Greger used to stay here with us in Sacramento every time he came to speak. Then we had COVID, and that kind of messed everything up, and I haven't had him since COVID. But I'm hoping one day to have him in person again because he is that good. And he is so entertaining as he speaks too, which makes a big difference, you know? It's kind of like Biden, you know, he didn't quite make it because his vibe was off. Well, Gregor has the great vibe, right? And he knows how to get the message out and with the humor and everything. So that's why he'll be here any minute now. He's coming on very shortly, and I'm so excited about having him here. So save your questions. I still have questions for Dr. Benny that I needed to finish.
Dr. Greger's, what's this? Dr.
Doc-
Greger, I'm here. I've been here. So how do we, are you, Dr. Greger, are you on the right link? Because we have two links. We have an audience link and we have panelist links. Nikita, can you message me the link to, or message it for Dr. How do we get Dr. Greger on? Nikita, you have his link. All the panelists have their own unique link, and we need to get that Dr. Greger's link to him. So Dr. Greger, give us a minute. Thanks for messaging us. We'll get you in a minute here.
Hi, Dr. Greger. We can't wait to hear you. We really enjoy.
There he is.
We
All
enjoy.
There he
right.
is. Hello. Welcome.
Hey, Linda, long time no
Oh,
see.
goodness. I know, I missed you. It's so nice to have you back here. You
I'm
got a
glad to
little
be
bit of gray
here.
going on too, like
Oh my
me.
God, Don's here. Hey, Don.
Hi, Mike.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
Benny's here. Everybody's
Yeah.
here. Whoa,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so glad to hear you. We're all glad to hear you. I have to talk about you, even though I think most people know who you are. I have to talk about your bio a little bit. Okay. Hold on again. I think I have the shortened version, thank goodness. Anyway, he's the founding member and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I'm a member of that, by the way. And he's a physician and internationally recognized speaker on nutrition. We all know that probably. His science-based nonprofit offers a free online portal hosting more than 2,000 videos and articles, offers a myriad of health topics. He's also a sought-after lecturer. We know it's hard to get him. And he's done like worldwide talks. I know that. And he went to the conference, he presented at the Conference on World Affairs and the World Bank, testified before Congress, thank you for that, and was invited as an expert witness to Oprah Winfrey's defense in the infamous meat defamation case, or trial, I should say. He's a graduate of Cornell University School of Agriculture and Tufts University School of Medicine. And he's also the author of How Not to Die Cookbook, How Not to Diet, How Not to Age, which we just saw your little video. It's so cute. I can't believe, Michael, that people used to advertise smoking. Doctors advertise smoking back then. I used to smoke because I'm 80. So I was right in there where, you know, my late husband taught me how to smoke. I remember him doing puff rings, and I thought it was so sexy when he did those rings of smoke. Anyway, so thank you so much for your work, and please go ahead and let's talk to you.
Let's do it. Let's do it. You're not gonna get any sexy rings from me.
That's good. I want you around. I don't want you going anywhere. I want you to be happy and healthy and sexy as you are. Yeah. So tell us about you have a new book too, right? Coming out.
How Not to Age is the new book, came out in December. Next book will be How Not to Hurt, talking about lifestyle approaches to pain management, which will be out December 2026.
Oh, great. Okay. We'll look forward to that. In the meantime, where did you lecture last? I mean, you're lecturing like all the time, every day. Do you
No,
ever
not
break?
anymore. Only 6 months. 6 months on the road. Did 100 cities, 6 months, but all done as of last month. So now
Oh, that's nice.
I'm hunkered back down and trying not to travel at all in hopes that
good.
I can get some work done.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So, have you been able to get many other doctors on board?
Well, who knows? I put out the stuff. Hopefully people are reading the stuff.
Yeah, because that is one of my biggest issues is no matter how many times I tell my new clients that what they got to eat, what you tell them to eat and what I tell them to eat, their doctor tells them something different.
Well, they should tell their doctor to check out some great books and websites and documentaries.
Yeah, if I can get some, but I'm not a doctor, so it sounds better when the doctor says it, right?
Well, but because there's so little nutrition in medical education, having an MD at the end of your name is basically an advertisement that you have no formal training whatsoever in nutrition, that you are clueless about the entire field with very few exceptions. And so that should be like a big red flag. Oh, you're an MD. Oh, I shouldn't listen to anything you have to say about food. But I understand the social authority afforded to physicians, which is in many cases very well deserved. But unfortunately, we just don't train people very well on nutrition.
And here they have the Hippocratic Oath.
They do. But I don't know if you read the Hippocratic Oath, it has some controversial things. No abortions, it's
Oh, really?
not all. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It is,
I
yes,
thought it would
indeed.
do no harm to anybody.
Oh, well, everybody likes the do no harm part, but they forget all the, pray to Asclepius and things. So there's a lot of stuff in there that it's a little outdated.
Yeah. Don't have sex with your slaves.
Well, that's still a good recommendation,
Oh, is that true, James? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No way.
Yes, yeah. You gotta read it someday. Read the whole thing. Don't just read.
It's not that it's not that long.
I've never read it.
Yeah, no, but that's why a lot of medical schools actually don't recite the oath, and they actually have some other oath. Like, actually, Pasadena Tufts was named Dr. Lasagna, and so there's actually a lasagna oath out there. It's kind of funny, but it's it's a little more. There's not a lot of slave talk in the updated ones.
Oh God! Oh my goodness! So how was it? Could you tell us what you eat in a day?
Well, I not only got the Daily Dozen, and I have that, of course, free on an app for iPhone, Android, but I've got 2 cookbooks and a new cookbook coming out this spring, the How Not to Age cookbook, which is absolutely gorgeous. We just submitted the final proofs, and I can't wait for it to come out. I'm super excited. And so those are some of my favorite recipes. I encourage people to check them out.
Give us a favorite recipe you like.
I think from How Not to Die, probably the pesto recipe is what what I make most often, just because it's so simple. I mean, there's things I probably like better, like I really like some of the kind of roasted cauliflower dishes and stuff, but it's like I have very little time. And so
Yeah.
something like the pesto dish is just like you throw in the walnuts, you throw in the basil, you throw in the grains, you throw in the, miso, you throw in the, and you just whip it up super quick. That's probably the
Say
one
the
I
name
make
of that
most.
one more time. I didn't hear the
Oh,
name of it.
my pesto
Pesto.
recipe and How Not to Die.
Okay. Okay, great. So did you personally taste test all the recipes?
I did not, but we have a group of volunteers. In fact, if you would like to be an official Nutrition Facts food tasting volunteer, I mean, you have to actually make it.
Yeah.
But no, they've been very helpful because sometimes some there's like a typo or something, and there's way too much of something, and so yeah, that feedback critically important for
Okay,
making
I'm in.
the
I'm
book.
in. I'm
Yeah.
in. I'm
Oh,
in.
yeah, no. I mean,
Yeah.
it's we really appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, tell us how important, a lot of people, I'm going to look for questions too, but a lot of people don't know how, I'm 80 and I teach aerobics, right? I teach weight training and,
Awesome.
I got
I
muscles.
love it. I love it. You're doing great.
Thank you. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is people don't seem to understand just how important exercise is, not just the food. They really don't get
I'm
it.
with you.
They,
100%.
they
Smoking
don't even
cessation,
walk. They
exercise,
don't even walk.
I know they should be walking.
Yeah.
They should get a treadmill. I'm on my treadmill right now, but it's just
Oh,
I have it stopped because I don't want to make people seasick. But yeah, I'm on the treadmill all day long.
oh, that's wonderful. And you do resistance training?
I did when I had a gym these last 6 months. I was at because I'm in the middle of nowhere here. So I had to get an apartment next to an airport, and they had a gym. It was so cool for the first time.
I can
So
send you
yeah,
a great video. I can send you a great 30
yeah.
minute video,
No,
whole
yeah, but
body.
the problem is, the problem is that it's very difficult to do it while still working. See, I mean, I can walk and work at the same time, but
Yeah.
it doesn't take away time. So I'm currently struggling trying to fit
Okay,
back
I'm gonna
resistance
help
in.
you with that. I'm gonna
Okay,
help you with
I appreciate it.
okay, let me see what questions we have for you. Any questions,
I
guys?
actually attached some bands to the treadmill, thinking that I could do some but no, it was the coordination was disaster because I need my hands to
Yeah.
type, so it just did not work out.
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound good. So let's see. Ask a question.
I'm looking at the chat here. Thank you, Sarah. I'm looking forward to I think all the recipes are done for this one, but for the next book, for the How Not to Hurt cookbook, we'd love to have your help taste testing. Kip asks, where am I now? I'm back in rural Virginia after a short
Like it
stint in
there?
Vancouver, Canada.
You like that Virginia better than Vancouver?
I do not, but Vancouver did not work out.
Oh, okay. Um, so why did you go to Virginia in particular?
Because I have a house. My house is in Virginia.
Oh, I see. A good
I have
reason.
a place to live.
All right. Well, that's
That
good.
definitely is a bonus when you're wondering where to live. Where you own a pillow is usually a good place to. It's a good first step.
Of all the foods, of all the top foods everybody should have every day, what would they be for you or for anybody to be the
Well,
health?
that's what the Daily Dozen is about. But if I could just pick three, it would be greens, dark green leafy vegetables, the healthiest vegetables, particularly cruciferous like kale or collards, arugula. Number two would be legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, the healthiest source of protein. Number three would be berries, the healthiest fruits.
Oh, yeah. Well, Dr. Bernard said blueberries are actually a good weight loss berry too. I don't know if
He
that's
does
true.
indeed.
Yeah. And I guess they're good for your brain, blueberries.
They're good for your brain. They're good for your vision. They're good for all sorts of things.
Okay. Um, and then I have my clients eat an apple every day because I found out all the things that go in an apple. My goodness.
I'm all in favor. I support your apple. I can't get good apples this time of the year where I am. There's a few fall apples, but I'm really a big fan of the winter apples. I'm cannot wait, and there is a pick my own farm right near here. I'm waiting for the first day, and I'm going to go get a half bushel.
That sounds great. Somebody asked, what's the difference between saturated fat and unsaturated fat?
So there's a biochemical difference which doesn't really matter. But from a health standpoint, what matters is that saturated fats tend to, but not always, but tend to raise your LDL cholesterol, your bad cholesterol. Something that unsaturated fats tend not to do. So by switching from saturated to unsaturated fats, which is typically switching from animal fats to plant fats, that's one of the reasons why your cholesterol lowers when you go on a plant-based diet is because the type of fat you're getting. However, there are rare saturated plant fats, the tropical oils, like
That's what I want to know. Yeah.
palm oil, palm kernel oil, coconut oil that do raise your cholesterol just like lard does, which is saturated pork fat. And so you need to stay away from all concentrated sources of saturated fat, particularly including the tropical oils, which are found in a lot of kind of vegan junk food.
I have so many people tell me, but olive oil is good for you.
Well, it is compared to coconut oil. It is compared to lard and tallow, but
it's
it's
still not good
not
for your
compared
heart.
to. I mean, but it's not compared to eating some walnuts for your fat or some other whole food source.
Great. I have a friend who had a stroke, and he's a whole food SOS free vegan, and he's now all of a sudden went from stage 3 kidney failure to stage 4. Is there anything else he can do?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, sodium intake. I mean, that's a critical part of kidney health
Taking out
is
all sodium.
moderating. Well, all added salt
Okay.
is one of the critical things you can do to slow down the rate of. Now, sometimes you can be on various drugs which affect your electrolyte balance. So I would definitely follow your doctor's advice in terms of, but in general, a low salt diet is critically important. So is, of course, cutting out animal protein, but if they're on a plant-based diet, that's not an issue.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a whole bunch of people that want in on the taste test.
That's fantastic. That's great. So what you do is you go to nutritionfacts.org and you click on the volunteer link. Now, right now, so you fill out a form and you're like, and you tell them what you want to do, and there's all sorts of things you can choose from. And if you're like, look, I just want to do the taste testing, well, then we will keep you on file. And then when the next cookbook is in process, takes about a year to actually put it together, then then we'll reach out and see if it's a good time in your life to make recipes. And then depending on how many volunteers and how many recipes, some people will do multiple recipes. Some people only do one recipe. They may do the recipe once, and then if there's a change, they'll do the recipe again with the change to make sure it's okay, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank
We
you.
may ask you to take pictures, that kind of thing. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And, you may be the one that finds some like critical error that, would make something, that would be delicious, but absolutely taste terrible and turn people off healthy food. Like it's, life and death consequences here to making, yummy food. And so you can be a big help.
I know about that because I did a food demo on somebody's recipe, and it was such a terrible recipe.
Oh
I had
no.
tried it first, and it wasn't enough food for one, and then it was too soupy and it didn't work out. And I thought,
Oh, you
oh,
always got to try it
it
first.
already has a whole book with it, so it's too late now, but it's kind of turned me off on the recipe, I'll tell you. Yeah, it's not good. Somebody asked if it's possible, my friend Kim actually asked, is it possible to exercise too much?
Oh yeah, it is. And so I talk about that. And the reason you don't hear about it is because the vast majority of people don't exercise enough. And so you just have this, public health advocates are not talking about the 1% that are overdoing it. They're talking about the large swath of people who are either aren't exercising at all or certainly aren't exercising the minimum recommended amount. But I mean, there is people absolutely can overdo it. And I talk about exactly how many hours a week is too much in terms of jogging, in terms of running. Talk about some of the really disappointing, statistics on marathon runners and triathletes and bodybuilders and all sorts of things that you absolutely can overdo it. It puts a stress on your body. Now, that can be a good stress in that you end up, even though you cause these little micro tears in muscle and you cause some damage to your DNA from the free radicals, you end up better off in the end. You actually heal when you heal your muscles, actual muscles get better. When you ramp up your DNA repair enzymes, you actually end up with less free radical damage than you did at baseline. So it has these what are called hormetic effects or hormesis, which is like that which doesn't kill you, make you stronger kind of thing. And so small doses of things that in large amounts are bad can actually have beneficial effects. But people don't forget the other side of the equation, which is large amounts can be bad. And so yeah, you don't want to overdo it.
Oh, thank you for that. We have another question. And I think James Benny answered it. Should you peel your apple? And he said no.
Don't peel I mean, you can peel it as long as you eat the peel, but you got to eat the peel.
Okay. And then somebody, Mona asked, I steam my collards. Are they still beneficial?
Absolutely, they're still beneficial. Steam those eat collards in whichever way will get you to eat the most collards.
Okay, now
but pressure steaming is actually the most nutrient preserving type of steaming. So you steam them in an Instant Pot. So you steam them for 0 minutes. You set it at 0, and as soon as it reaches pressure, it stops, and then you immediately release the steam. And so they're nice and tender and wonderful as if you steam them forever, but you actually steam them very short time because you do it under pressure. You actually retain more nutrition. I have a video on that if you're interested in learning more.
So do you put a little steam basket in the bottom of the...
Right. You can get stainless steel steam baskets. You can get silicone steam baskets. Right. And just put a little layer of water and yeah, perfect.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
I just steam some kale today.
I have a question. I microwave a lot. I love my microwave.
Great. High five.
Oh, good. But does it take out nutrients?
Oh, no, it's very nutrient preserving.
Thank you.
So I mean, there's like a 15% decrement in some of the most heat sensitive nutrients like vitamin C. But 15%. So basically, eat 6 florets of microwave broccoli instead of 5 florets of raw broccoli. But if you like, cooked broccoli better, then you're ahead of the game.
I do my potatoes in there.
Oh, I do my sweet potatoes. I rehydrate my dried mushrooms, and then I use microwave all the time.
So my Russian boy from Vancouver just asked a question. I call him my Russian boy. He's in his 40s. But he stayed with me off and on when he was a youngster. Anyway,
nice.
Yeah, he's like my son. Anyway, he wants to know a good and easy way to cook and eat kale.
Oh, well, so I pressure steam it. So any way you eat kale is the right way to eat kale. So you can dehydrate it and have kale chips. You can put it in soup. That's delicious. You can blend it up in like a, kind of pesto recipe, or you can, God, whatever you want to do.
You put it in your pesto recipe?
I absolutely do.
Oh, okay, good. So we got to get his book, Bible. We got to get his book and then use his pesto recipe. Yeah. And you can make a Parmesan with like almonds or cashews or something too, with nutritional yeast.
Some nutritional yeast,
Grind
yeah,
it up.
sure. Yep.
Yeah,
Yes, you can.
put that on your tail.
You're making me hungry.
Is there any benefit to putting lemon on things? What does that do?
Yeah. What would be a good addition? So, yeah. So putting the reason why adding lemon to fruit salad, for example, prevents it from turning brown, is the change in pH inhibits the activity of an enzyme called polyphenol oxidase, which eats up some of the nutrition. So as your fruit turns brown, or your mushrooms turn brown, or any fruit and vegetable kind of turns brown, you're actually losing nutrition. And you can prevent that in certain ones with the addition of lemon juice.
Lemon juice.
I'm trying to think of some other.
That sounds
Just make sure if anytime you eat or drink acidic beverages, sour beverages or foods, you just want to make sure to rinse your mouth out with water afterwards so you don't erode your dental enamel. And you don't want to brush your teeth right after eating something sour, because your enamel's in a softened state and you can actually hurt your enamel even more. So just rinsing your mouth out with water after drinking hibiscus tea or lemon water, or
I'm glad you said
whatever.
so. I'm glad you said so because I always forget to do that. Always.
Do it.
Okay, now somebody wants to know, Kimberly, my friend Kim,
Do it.
wants to know how much water to drink and how much to avoid dehydration. People ask me that question a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on ambient temperatures and activity levels, but I give guidelines in how not to age in terms
Okay.
of for men and women, how much, and depending on those factors. So yeah, check it out from your local public library. Unfortunately, I got another interview coming up, and so I've
Okay.
got to run. I had a great
Okay, well,
time.
thank
Keep up
you
the
so
great
much for
work.
coming. We so appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
All
your
right.
marvelous work and it's fabulous.
All right. So great to see
I want to see you
you,
again
James,
soon.
Don.
I want to see you again soon.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, that's it, guys. So we have a recording of this will be ready at some time. So we'll send it to you when it's done. I think we had a great time today. We had some wonderful speakers, and James Benny and Dr. Don and Dr. Klonike. And so, wow, thank you so much, everybody.
Of course, sir.
We'll do this again pretty soon because it's just so great to get it out there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Have a
thank
great
you.
day.
Thank you so
Great
much.
day, guys.
Thanks for helping, everybody. It's great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks,
Good. Yeah.
everybody.
Thank you,
You
Peter.
bet. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Linda. You rock. You're amazing.
Well, thank you.
Inspiration for the fountain of youth.
Thank you for
That's
you.
right.
Thank you for you.
All right.
So,
Bye-bye, everybody. I guess
Bye.
it's just the three of us left. Stop the recording.